Okay, welcome everyone. It is 9 o'clock on November 6, 2023. Welcome to our strategic planning meeting. Let the record reflect that we have Commissioner Jordan is on Zoom. Commissioner Kearns and myself are here in the conference room, and I'm not sure where the other commissioners are at this point in time. So we are going to go ahead and get started though, because we've got a busy day and a schedule to keep. So we have Ashley Blake with the Sports Commission. So welcome this morning, and I'll let you introduce the others that are with you.
Yeah, hello, Ashley Blake. New as the CEO of Spokane Sports. I've been at the post for just under a year and joined by my counterparts.
Yeah, so Mike Basinger, Economic Development Director for the City of Spokane Valley.
And I'm Cherie Gwynn, Senior Director of Sports at Spokane Sports.
Thank you. Okay, and got a presentation, and Ron will drive the slides for us. So
Okay,
we'll let him start.
Yeah, so really today it's two-part. The first one, we're going to speak just on behalf of Spokane Sports about a renewal for the rent-a-car tax, and then part two, we're going to bring Mike in and talk about a special project we're working on in the Valley.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for this opportunity. It's been a hot moment since we've had the opportunity to get in front of you guys, so we appreciate this opportunity. We have a video that showcases one of the marquee events that we've hosted the past year at the podium, but due to time, we want to just kind of skip over it for right now so we can really get into the nuts and bolts of the presentation. So this year, we're going to kind of overview what our organization has been doing for the past 5 years. We're going to do a impact of sports tourism starting back from 2019 through 2023. And really the notable part of this is looking at the new assets that Spokane has brought onto, we've brought onto as far as venues, the podium coming online, which is new. We're looking at a permanent cross-country course in Spokane Valley and looking ahead at what 24 through 28 looks like as we move forward in sports tourism. So the key factors that we focus on here is we really work on bidding on events. So what that means is we work with our Olympic and Paralympic governing bodies. So anything that has a USA in front of it that you see, it's USA Swimming, USA BMX, USA Volleyball. Those are the key critical components that we work on first and foremost when we're looking to bring events into our city. So some of those highlights would be like P&Q, Pacific Northwest Qualifier Volleyball. It's a huge event for our city. It really showcases 2 weekends of volleyball, and it's the largest economic driver in the city for sports, even over Hoop Fest. The other part that we're huge advocates on is facilities. So as you can see, the podium was a brainchild out of our office. It was erected in 2021. And as we look forward to see how we can improve that, we're looking at a permanent cross-country course in Spokane Valley. In addition, we work on regional events, so grassroots events. So supporting our local grassroots clubs. So is it working with our judo affiliation, working with Evergreen Volleyball, working with other groups to help support the events that we bring into the city. And then lastly, the other pillar that we really focus on is community engagement. So we host the Youth Spokane Awards, Hall of Fame, and we really work on how do we give back to the community through legacy events of what, how they mark our community at the end of the day. And what we say our team is really an extension of the clients that we work with. So it starts with the event research and bidding and the recruitment. Because of the podium and because of the facilities that we have coming online, we have upped our staff from 5 to 10 to be able to support and facilitate this. As part of that, when we bid on events, a big part of it is we need financial incentive to be able to bring those rights holders to Spokane. So that most of that time that lies in being able to offset facility costs as they come in, helping them with hotels, helping them with other components as they make their way into our market. We also specialize in event marketing and media. We have a person dedicated to just PR. We just hired a new director of marketing that will help us really expand our portfolio and what we're able to do in sales, and really bring sports to fruition so our local citizens can appreciate and be able to get out and participate or watch as fans. We really focus also on athlete experience. As part of that, that first touch point coming into the airport, it's renting cars, it's getting to the airport, it's really facilitating and being able to support the infrastructure of our local citizens here through spending money in market. So that's a huge part of like how our organization works and helps kind of offset what we do here locally. Go ahead. And these pictures, I think, pictures are worth a million words, and I think this really showcases, the different aspects that we have. We have the BMX track out at Dwight Merkel. We have the podium that just came online. In the first year, we hosted USA Indoor Track and Field Championships. We host State B, a legacy community event. We've hosted USA Curling Championships out at Eastern. We work up at Mount Spokane, working with Spokane Nordic. So we really try and plug and play anywhere in the county that we can fit facilities and sports that match together. And we will continue to do that as we move forward. And I think that's a key factor to our success, is the ability that we have facilities that support the infrastructure of what we need here locally.
So this is a look at really the past 5 years, which is the extension of our contract. You can see, obviously, there's a big drop in 2020 and then kind of gearing back up in 2021. But on an annual basis, we're bringing between 100 and 150,000 people to Spokane County. Average length of stay is typically about 2.5 days, and they're bringing in spending at our hotels, at our restaurants, retail, and just kind of an infusion of new dollars without wearing on our services as a community as well. Next slide, please. So looking at the usage of our contract, really 3 key components. It was that youth and amateur sports. For an example, it was the WA State Golf Championships, which is actually utilizes golf courses throughout Spokane County, maintain and operate public sports facilities. So we're typically out in the market at trade shows, at conventions, hosting site visits and market. And the last one is public sports facility and planning. So contributing to studies like Plants Ferry, looking at it from not only a local perspective, but how we can improve that to potentially host some regional championships. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to take a snapshot of 2023, and this is kind of a summary of what we've hosted this year. 67 different sporting events, generating about 65,000 hotel room nights, and then welcoming 170,000 people to market. And then also in there, we have a survey that's showing daily spend in a market is between $175 and $225, depending on the level of competition, knowing that youth and specifically girls sports spend more in market. And then this is just a quick summary of some high-level events that we've hosted this year. USA Wrestling, Women's Nationals, USA Team Handball, National Championships, USA Judo Senior Nationals was here in May. And then we had a very long run with badminton. The Junior National Championships was in market for 7 competition days. And the World Federation competed over a 13-day period. And then down to the numbers. So historically, Spokane Sports has been funded by the retail rental car tax. We use those funds to go out and acquire new events to bring to market, or also create our own. So we're requesting $454,000 from 2024 through 2028, and that's kind of how it shows how it stacks up against the other allocations. And then just the summary. So as Cherie mentioned, we have 2 new tourism assets right now. We have the Podium, which came online in December of 2021, One Spokane Stadium, which just opened a few weeks ago. And then up next, we'll talk about our next facility project that we have in the mix.
So good morning, everybody. Again, Mike Basinger, Economic Development Director for the City of Spokane Valley. I just really quickly wanted to comment on how just coming here just brings back so many memories. I ran into Jim Amacio and Vicky. It's just like everybody that mentored me, and really this is where I started. So had 5 years here at the county. But it got me thinking about some of the partnerships we've had over the years. In particular, I was thinking about Appleway Trail. I mean, a 5.8 mile trail that goes through the center of our city, adjacent to Sprague, near retail services and transportation. That was a partnership with Spokane County to allow us to put that trail there. And it's used daily by all of our citizens. It's amazing thing that we achieved. Another thing that got me thinking was just relationships and other partnerships was we actually extended sewer from Sullivan Road all the way to Barker and beyond, which really enabled us to develop 500 acres of unimproved land that was growing alfalfa. Now Amazon's there, Mercer's there. That was a county partnership as well. So we've done amazing things. More recently, Plants Ferry, where we actually both contributed to a study, a master plan study, and I know we're going to continue to work to improve that complex. But today, through these efforts, we've identified a really, really amazing opportunity, and that's to put a cross-country course in the city of Spokane Valley on a piece of property we have out at Flora. Through conversations with Spokane Sports, we've been able to identify that we could get this done really quickly. It's not very expensive. We own the property, so we could be hopefully hosting events there, NCAA, collegiate, post-collegiate, in 2025, which would just be amazing for us. We're a running town, we always have been, and so to be able to extend that and allow our high schools to use this as well, and our colleges as a practice facility, and develop that park out. We did get an RCO grant that helped us purchase that. One of the contingencies was that we needed to do something within 5 years. It also helps us meet that as well. So I'll let Ashley speak a little bit more and team about the cross-country course itself.
Yeah, can you just advance one slide, please?
Oh, okay. Well, I think a quick overview of the cross-country course, I think it really plays off of what we're already doing at the podium. We're going into our third year of a very successful running community, and you can see that there is a need for it. We are the only facility west of basically the Mississippi that has a permanent or a hydraulic bank track, which really sets us apart when we look to bid on events, when we're looking with like USA Track and Field, but we've also been able to create our own events, which is something that we haven't been able to do traditionally. So to really play off of that, we're like, what's the next evolution of running in our community? And that big need is a permanent cross-country course. Not only is it a low barrier of entry for kids getting into the sport, you just need a pair of shoes, right? So, and I think as you can see, like Active for Youth, if any of you guys have kids, Active for Youth has been instrumental in growing that in elementary schools, and we want to be able to play off of that. We've got a great grasp on what, high school, we run 2 high school meets at the podium, and we run a lot of collegiate and post-collegiate. So to play off of that, our team has done a lot of effort before we even had funding for this to really look. We've gone to Terre Haute, we've gone all over the US and researching what does it look like to put a permanent cross-country course in. And Mike and his team has done a fabulous job in identifying a piece of property. We've now got a contract with Kimley and Horn to be able to progress that. It's a design to build. So as we're looking to really kind of move the needle forward, it's there. It's just, if you build it, they will come. So that's really kind of the next evolution of what we look at is like, how do we improve? How do we put something, a marquee championship event in the city of Spokane Valley? And I think this is going to be what is going to be the catalyst moving forward. Go ahead, next. Yeah, maybe one more. Okay, thank you. There we go. Okay, so I kind of touched base a little bit on this, but especially for our hotel partners, and we look into the community, what are those, off shoulders that you can fill hotel room nights, that we can fill our city where it's not the mainstay. And so we've identified cross country as September, October, November, sometimes even to December. And so really it's a great opportunity for our community, and especially our retail community or hotel partners, to really be able to hone in on something where we can filter in, bring in people into our economy and feed our economy when it's traditionally maybe some down months. So between, cross country, we go into indoor track and field. And then the other purpose that we're looking at for this cross country course is cyclocross. So Ashley and I just had the opportunity, we went over to Missoula. They hosted a Pan American Cyclocross Championship. So it can play two parts, not just cross country, but cyclocross. And cyclocross is the other shoulder months, and that's December, January, February, in addition to some springtime. So the ability to program this is there, and we're able to fulfill and meet kind of that economic needs of what our community needs to drive forward. The other part is it's an opportunity for, high schools to practice here. So we can generate some revenue, we can generate economic impact through being able to program this facility. So, and it's very approachable. We're looking at 7 million is what it's been assessed at. And as Mike mentioned, something that we can open here in 2025 and be turnkey. So turnkey meaning that we already have the infrastructure for timing there. It's permanently built, so it's not our staff going out every week and, lining the course with stakes and, pounding rebar into the ground. So to be able to just plug and play really makes it a unique asset. Whereas before, if we're hosting cross country, it's maybe at Plants Ferry, it's maybe at a golf course, and every time it's staff time and infrastructure to go in and be able to do it every week, week after week. And so to be able to have something like this would truly set us apart, especially here in Washington or the West Coast in general. So there's definitely a need for it. Next one. So really, as I just mentioned, the primary would be cross country, looking at the key windows of, September through November. And we can really focus on anywhere from youth all the way up to professional. And the amount of runners that we can have at a time could be 250 all the way up to like 2,100. So the ability to run the mass amount of people through this, it meets all of those standards that we need to be able to move forward. As I mentioned, secondary, we'd be looking at cyclocross. It's nice because you can do two different separate courses without them crossing over. And cyclocross, if you haven't seen it, it's time-based, they're gritty, they like the mud. So you can get out there and you can make the course as dirty as you want it to be in some sense. It was interesting watching it, they like that mud, they like the elements. And so it really plays to the natural geographic features of that area. Next.
But before we move on, can I ask, so for cross country, you say the season, your key window, September to November. I think I get that because we get a lot of something in late November, December, January, that a lot of snow, but you say may extend to February. How?
That depends on the level.
Because we have winter.
Yeah. So the USA Track and Field Club cross country or a master's level or a Pan American event, they may run into the month of February, and they'll do
In the
frozen
snow?
ground,
Yeah.
snow, sleet. It's one of those sports that's very a match for our climate.
Okay, I didn't know cross country ran in the snow. Okay.
Yeah, we've actually hosted at least 3 of them where we had to get a plow out and actually plow the course before they ran. Not necessarily your ideal situation, but they really adapt to the natural terrain. They if it's a steep hill, they're gonna tackle it. So the hardier it is, the better.
So my question would be having these two overlap, because if they like the cycling, likes it muddy and all of that, that's not as good for cross country because you can twist an ankle on a bike lane. So I guess I don't see.
Two separate courses.
Okay.
Two separate courses, yep. So one is groomed with grass and nice for cross country, and cyclocross it can be dirt, it can be weeds, it can be, they actually usually do a natural feature. So when we were in Missoula, they built a bridge, they had some little mini steeples that you went over. Sometimes you're going over logs. So you really get to play to whatever that natural geographic is. And then there's always a feature or marquee feature that you can do, whether it's a bridge. So if we need to go over the cross-country course, we can build a bridge. And what they do is they take their bike, they run up the stairs, and then there's a slope at the other side and they ride down. So there's fun ways that you can interact the two without ever it impacting one course or the other. Next.
So this is really a look at the partnership between our organizations. So Spokane Sports, we're at the table with the facility design, the key attributes, working with our stakeholders on the major event recruitment and event creation. And then the city of Spokane Valley would be the facility owner, facility manager, kind of facilitating the relationships with state parks and the commercial neighbors. So really, I think this partnership allows us to kind of stay in our specialty lanes and kind of contribute in a way that's collaborative.
Once again, this is just our team out doing our research. Like I said, Ashley and I were just in Missoula last week looking at the Pan American cyclocross. We're like, if we can get a Pan American here, even better. So what does that look like? What's that standard? Really doing our research on our front end before we even had, that partnership with the city of Spokane Valley to know like what we are doing, we can actually actualize on it. And it's not just a pipe dream. I mean, it is a pipe dream, but knowing that it is something that we can actually take action on, I think is an important part of like our staff to know that we can execute it in the end.
So this is a look at the complete pipeline of events that we've identified for the cross course. So in total, 35 unique events. This wouldn't be actualized on an annual basis. This represents kind of the big picture of everything that we've identified. As Cherie mentioned, shoulder season. So really looking at, bringing tourism dollars to Spokane, September through February. And in total, we're expecting about 37,000 attendees that would come for a cross-country event or cyclocross. Next slide, please.
So you're talking about combined.
Yep, kind of the complete pipeline, and some of it depends on when we would break ground. So as we sit today, we have an opportunity in front of us to be able to bid on the NCAA championships. Those bids are due to the Indianapolis National Office in February. So, we've done the work on the backside. We have preliminary course layouts. We have, ongoing conversations with our decision makers. And today we're coming with a request to be able to break ground in Q1 of 2024 so we could hit this pretty aggressive timeline of submitting bids to the NCAA, as well as, the NJCAA, USA Track and Field, NAI, which is smaller schools, and creating our own collegiate invitationals and youth events as well. Next slide, please. So then this is kind of the same look at the budget. So for the cross course specifically, we're requesting $332,000. That was out of the fund balance that is currently held in the retail rental car. And this is on top of our Spokane Sports request from a few moments ago. So then just a summary, it's a one-time request to build the cross course in Spokane Valley. And really the time is, we have an opportunity sitting in front of us to break ground in 2024 to be a catalyst to host those major events like the NCAA Cross Country Championships. As Cherie mentioned, it's an investment in our community. Cross country is one of the lowest barriers of sport. Really all you need is a pair of running shoes to compete. And then we love the opportunity to put Spokane Valley on the map, featuring the natural terrain, featuring the geography of the area, while also being supplemental and complementary to what we have as a running reputation already. So with that, are there any questions that we can answer?
And maybe just before, really quickly, we did just get from our Lodging Tax Advisory Committee a commitment of $4.3 million. So that's going to our council. Our council recommended that we go forward to them. So it just needs to go through this last phase with our city council. But we will have, actually it's $4.4 million, I apologize. We're also making a state capital request of $600,000. which we have GSI, Greater Spokane Valley Chamber supporting. So we really feel like we can get there. We're also looking at the money that we would be reimbursed from the RCO grant to apply to this course. So we're almost there in terms of having enough money to build this thing out. So really appreciate any extra support we could get.
So one of the questions I have, so just to remind us where the property is on Flora, because it's just across the river, is that correct?
Yes, so if you can
DOT
think of where
property?
Scraps used to be in Spokane Valley, it's really just across the street. So it's north of the Spokane River and east of Flora. It's a beautiful piece of property that used to be owned by the Washington State Department of Transportation. So that's where we intend to locate it. I mean, it is really beautiful. You would never think that something like this is sitting just right there in the city, kind of in an industrial area, but it's outstanding.
And then, I know at one point it was trying to make a loop trail from there. Is it still part of the plan?
Yes, we would still like to do the River Loop Trail. There's some hurdles there. One is the adjacent industry that's pulling gravel out. There's a pinch point there that we need to negotiate with them. There's also another pinch point at Kaiser that we've been in active conversations with. I think that may take us some time to work through those. Our initial idea would be to make that connection from Sullivan to Flora Park, and then also make a pedestrian bridge from Flora Park across to Green Acres neighborhood, all of which are in the planning stages.
And then it's like when this isn't used for events, then it's an actual park for the city as well.
Yes, absolutely. And as they mentioned, a practice facility for the high schools. We've had so much excitement around that, and the colleges, just to be able to have a practice facility in our region to, really, and again, the entry to this, the barrier to entry is shoes. I mean, it's just an amazing sport for our youth.
Apologize for being a little late, but this is very
No worries.
exciting. So what's the total cost then that you guys are anticipating to build out?
7 million's our
Okay.
estimate to date. As they mentioned, we have Kimley Horn that just got on contract. They're gonna actually put out the conceptual design. We're going for a progressive design build, which means we have to get approval. All this has to happen relatively quickly. We're excited because if we can meet these timeframes, we could have some pretty amazing events here in our region relatively quickly.
I think it'd be nice to see what that spreadsheet is as to, from purchasing the property, which I know happened a couple of years ago, and you got a grant from the state. So so it's like for me, it's like seeing kind of where we're at and how much, what the gap is and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'd be happy to provide that. I think at this point, if we got everything, we're probably about $500,000 shy of 7 million, if everything comes together.
So do they normally kind of go like east to west for the NCAA cross? Do they try and do one on the west side of the United States and on the east, or do they just look for the best bid?
They look for the best bid.
Okay. I was just wondering if you thought that we were more positioned because of it maybe not being in the west for a while or something.
Well, that's definitely, would be definitely part of our selling point, is because there's nothing like it on the West Coast. It would be very, they'd look at it very favorable because it would be an asset to get everyone to the West Coast. And then the other thing, the aggressive timeline is we are looking so far ahead in the future. We're looking at NCAA bids for 27 and 28. So if we miss this round that is due in February, we won't be bidding until 29. So that's a little bit behind the aggressiveness behind it, is if we can get the conceptual drawings up and going, then we can actually submit something to the NCAA that shows, yes, we do have something in place. Yes, there is a design, there's infrastructure here. We work really closely with some of our contractors that we work with for indoor track and field that also have a seat at the table for cross country with the NCAA selection committee. So we've been able to pull some of their knowledge and bring them out. Well, we will be bringing them out on site to make sure that what we are going to produce is going to meet the NCAA standards, as well as, what does that look like when we look at like World Athletics and USA Track and Field. So a big part of this design to build is bringing in these subcontractors to ensure what we're doing is the correct path that's gonna win us bids down the line.
So when you submit if you submit in 24, it would be for 27 or 28?
Correct.
And you hope to have it built by the end of 25?
Correct.
So then you have a whole year to
Program it.
Right, make sure
Yeah,
you work
get
out all
people
the,
out there. Yep,
work out all the kinks.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
oh, it's very exciting.
Thank you. We're really excited about it. Just from like the youth on, like my kids are in cross country. We have a couple people on our staff that have done cross country, and the need in our, not just the city, but the state, it's there. I mean, you have a few places that have like some, there's an apple orchard that runs some in Yakima, but to have something that could be world-class identified would be a unique feature and a huge selling point to bring in, big events to our area.
Well, and that's why I was asking about the ground, just because,
Yeah.
Bench Arboretum gets used a lot, but it's like you've got to watch out for all the different holes and all of that, having kids that have gone through it myself, so.
It'll be fun to be able to have like a pristine cross-country course, but then you're gonna have a gritty, rough, cross-country course, and to be able to kind of match the two is like a little pair, like a little match made in heaven, really, to be able to kind of do both.
And when it's not programmed, I guess I keep asking, but is it open to the public? So like,
Absolutely.
because I could see like little kids, BMX, like kids, wanting to do
Oh,
that
yeah.
kind of course, so.
Yeah, and it's actually very highly used right now, believe it or not.
I know, absolutely.
It's kind of amazing how people just make their way to the site, especially along the UP Railroad from Otis Orchards in that area. They just kind of walk over. And so it's very well used right now. So we intend if we open it up, it could obviously be more accessible.
That could be a good collaboration with Washington State Parks on maybe some interpretive signs, especially with the history behind it. So I think there's a good opportunity between using it as a placemaker to run events, but also a community asset. Every time we've been out there, there's been people either, out running around the, makeshift trails that are already out there. We've seen some search and rescue dogs out there. So the ability to use it as a community person is going to be, it's going to be open to everyone. And we've even talked about like, what is that trail around cross country? Because if you've ever been to a cross country meet, parents are frantic of like, okay, where's the next point that I can see my kids? So as we're building it, we're trying to be thoughtful. Is there's a loop on the outside to help the community walkers so they're not interfering with the trail system. So there's a lot of thought process that's going behind it to ensure that we're not tearing up, a cross-country course during, its season, but making sure that there's an opportunity for the community to be able to utilize it and, recreate on it as well.
I think if you could, for me, if you can give me kind of that spreadsheet, just to, where you're at, that'd be great. You see the head nod from Commissioner Jordan as well, so. Thank you very much for presenting today. Good information. It'll be, as we're figuring out our budget on the Carmel tax too, we got lots of questions on that to see where we're at and where we need to be and all of that. So, okay, thank you.
so
Thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, that's gonna take us to Randy.
All right, budget, first up, we have Shrek, if they're available.
Yeah.
All right. We'll have 3 budget workshops first. We'll have Shrek, Public Works, and then Scraps. And then we will get to our section of the meeting, which is gonna be talking about October sales tax. We'll talk about October 10-month results, and then we'll work on finishing, hopefully going through the budget and maybe getting close to done.
Good morning. I will let you do it, and you can pull your chair up.
No, I'm fine. It just bounced and I wasn't prepared. So it's a bad bouncy chair, now I know.
There we go.
All right, so thank you for the opportunity to come and chat with you today. We're gonna give you just a small agency overview of what Shrek is doing and how they're doing, along with going over our budget for 2024. Our budget was approved by our board this last month. That is a privilege that they are granted through the charter and the bylaws. So they've looked at the budget, they've shared it with everyone, and they've approved it on their end. So go to the next slide. So what we're going to cover today is just our governance members and partners, just so it's, again, kind of an overview for you, what our budget looks like, some operational overview that I'll hand over to my deputy director to kind of go over some statistics and some thoughts there. And then we want to share with you some of the great highlights and accomplishments. I will tell you that Shrek is doing really well. We are very proud of our employees and the group effort that they make to serve our citizens and our community every day. So we're happy to share the great things that are going on there. Next slide. So just as a reminder, our governance is an executive board that consists of 10 members. If you look at those members on our board, you will see that the majority of them are public safety leadership partners. That was designed that way by this incredible board of county commissioners so that we are getting approval on things for the people that we serve. So that has worked out really well for us. We also have the county CEO, so Scott sits on my board. I can talk to you guys about that later. Yeah, whatever you want to do. No, he's fine. He's great. And we also have the city administrator, and then we have a non-voting citizen representative that comes to provide us the citizen's perspective from time to time. So that's much appreciated. Any questions on our governance or our board? I will also point out that we only have one elected official on our board. That is the sheriff, and he is not on our board because he's an elected official. He's on our board because he oversees the law enforcement for our community. So that is his purpose on the board. And that has, again, no offense to anyone here, but that has worked out well for us.
Yeah, and that was part of the intent when we set it up, was to not have electeds, but he is the one who does represent the sheriff's department, so he needs to be there.
Nope, super appreciated. So next slide. So these are our member agencies. It's also important for me to point out that while we provide 911 crime check services and dispatch services, one of the other key things that we do is provide service for our radio system. So we have been given the responsibility of managing and maintaining the Spokane regional radio system for all of public safety. So that is something that we take great pride in. We've done a really great job with that radio system and making sure that it is always up to date, well maintained, and that it's providing the best service possible. So along with serving these member agencies on the 911 crime check dispatch side, we also service them for the radio system. Yep.
And so does that work for the City of Spokane Police Department as well?
Yes.
So even though they're not part of the Shrek system, you're still doing those services?
Correct. And that includes crime check as well. So if you go to our next slide, they're what we consider a partner agency. We also have listed here Cheney Police. That is one thing to note for you, is that Cheney Police is actually going to be joining us. So they're in the process of navigating through closing down their own dispatch and building up their own report systems and then moving on to us. So we anticipate first quarter of 2024 that they will be a part of our agency. We've budgeted them for 2024 as well. So that leaves Spokane Police Airport and Spokane Police Department are our partner agency, so we don't provide dispatch services for them, and we don't take 911 calls for them, aside from the initial, what is the location of your emergency, and then a transfer through to them. But we do still continue to do crime check for them.
Interesting. Is there a reason why the airport hasn't?
The airport is actually in the city of Spokane. So they do things a little bit different than we do because they're under different rules and regulations, and really it's not a great deal of work for them, but it's more security that they handle. So they do share a CAD system with us, though. They have the same computer aided dispatch system, so we can share information that way. But Spokane Police Airport also dispatches for their local fire that's on site too. So, but we interact with them a little bit here and there. Next slide. So our budget overview. So let me really quickly pull it up so it's in front of me. Those numbers are small for me.
Yes.
I'm not getting younger, it turns out. So we are funded by basically three main revenues. Our 911 excise tax, which is basically 95 cents per month for every cell phone or home phone. That is a pretty stagnant tax, I would say. It barely goes up or down, so we budgeted next year for that same amount of 3 million. Then we have our 0.1% sales tax for emergency communications. The purpose of that tax is mainly to fund our radio system and crime check. Any other leftover kind of goes towards our capital and our future planning. And then we have user fees. So our user fees are basically our dispatch fees. So that's what each partner agency pays based on their call volume. They basically pay per call from the previous year. We include with that some overhead as well as dispatch services. So one thing I'll point out is if you look at the intergovernmental emergency communication sales tax on that first line, you'll see that last year we had it budgeted at basically 7.7 million, and this year that's quite a bit higher. The reason for that is a few years ago, 1155, the 1155 legislation that was passed basically stated that the city of Spokane would get their apportionment to do with what they please. So we budgeted in a way that we intended to give them what we thought would be their fair apportionment, and then we would bill them for whatever services we provided. That hasn't come to fruition. My understanding is that's still a conversation that's taking place between the county and the city. And so we're assuming that unless something changes later on, everything's gonna stay status quo. So we included that in our budget as a normal tax revenue until something goes differently, and then we'll bring it back to the board at that point. So that's why you'll see that big change in that number. Again, that 911 excise tax, we have it remain stagnant. We don't plan on seeing much change in that unless the state goes forward and decides to ask for more money on that sales tax, which I believe is somewhat of a discussion right now on a state level of looking for more to come back from the cell phones and the home phones. But I'm not sure where that stands exactly. We've budgeted for about 8 million from our user fees. There's also a small amount in there for our state grant. We are required by the state to participate in certain committees and things like that to make sure that the state is kind of all rowing in the same direction. And so by participating in that, they provide a little additional funding from the military office to help support us. So that's an additional grant that we get. And then other than that, we've got our interest that we receive on any of our reserves that we have in place. But overall, like I mentioned, we're healthy. Our tax revenue is healthy. Our budgeting and our planning for it is also very healthy. Some of the main capital items that we have coming up, we are in the process of negotiating the new CAD system. So we'll be taking that responsibility on. And it is important to mention that this CAD system is a regionalized CAD system. So it's for everyone in the region to participate in. So we've budgeted our portion of what that will look like. We'll manage and maintain that CAD system on a local level here at Shrek. But we encourage any of the participants to join with us. We've selected a CAD. Like I said, we're in negotiations for that right now. So luckily for the county, they'll be getting out of the CAD business, and that'll be coming onto our plate to take care of. The other major project that we have coming up, of course, is a new facility, which we've talked about before. So we're hoping we're getting close to a lease on that for that property so that we can begin the stages of planning. We are, as I've mentioned before, in desperate need of more space. And so the sooner we can kind of move through that, the better. As it sits right now, we have about $19 million in reserve that we've saved. And we anticipate putting about $3 million more at the end of this year from savings and from an addition from the fire departments. So we're looking healthy there too. Any questions on the budget? We'll move to the next slide, and I'm gonna hang on, I've got a couple more things. So I lied, I was eager. So the 2024 approved staffing, one thing I do wanna mention is that we've gone up in our numbers on report technicians. Right now we sit at 12. Starting January, we anticipate having 22. The reason for that is we've heard some different feedback from our partners as well as from the community. The way that the process works right now when you call crime check is if it's a true crime check call, so something that happened a while ago or something that they just want a report number on. Our call receivers will take information, put it in our system, and a report technician, usually within 24 hours, will call that person back to file the report. What we've heard from our partners as well as our citizens is that's a little frustrating at times. And so we don't disagree. It was kind of what we had to do at the time. And with the change in our staffing model, we're going to have almost 24/7 report techs on site so that phone call can be transferred directly to report tech to finish that report for them. So it should be same call, same service for the most part, unless we have an influx of calls that we just don't have the staffing to handle that. So there's two great things with that. Number one is hopefully it helps make it a little bit easier for our citizens when they're calling in. Additionally, it also frees up our call receivers to be able to move that call through a lot quicker so that they can get on to the next call, so.
Yep, so I would say that's great to hear because I've heard a lot of complaints from citizens that Prime Check is not working the way they would like it to or thought it was. And that was a big part of passing the 0.1% was for Prime Check and getting Prime Check back up. So to me, that's a very important service to be doing it and doing it well for our citizens.
Yeah, we agree, and it's, like I said, we weren't sure if we were gonna have the report technicians when we first, because that's a new position at Shrek when we started in 2019, so we wanted to make sure that was a viable position now that we know that it's a great position to have and it's offered a lot of opportunity for our employees within. It's really something we'll keep and we'll hopefully do a lot better going forward, so.
I've heard folks talk about, I haven't heard about them taking the information, getting a call back. I've heard, or I've seen reports of folks claiming that they were actually sent to a voicemail when they call.
Yeah, so this is perfect timing because Spokane News put something forward yesterday about that.
That's where I
yeah.
saw it.
So that's not quite accurate. What it
Okay.
is when you call 911, if all of the call receivers are busy, if there's an influx in calls, like often happens when we have a major incident occur, that voice that they hear that they consider to be a voicemail, or it's basically someone saying, hey, please hang on the line, our callers are busy, please stay on the line, we'll get to you as soon as we can. What becomes an even more frustrating thing for our citizens is that oftentimes that they assume that is a voicemail and they hang up, and that puts them at the bottom of the queue when they call again. So it takes even that much longer for them to get a hold of somebody. So there's not a lot we can do about that. One of the issues that we have right now is our staffing. Our staffing was atrocious through COVID. We are now in the upswing of that, but we'll show you in a few minutes some statistics that shows that currently we are 100% staffed in our 911 call receiving area, but we actually only have 36% of that staffing viable on the floor because the rest are either in classroom training or training on the floor. So we're in a much better position as far as having bodies available, but those bodies are not fully trained just yet. So we're working towards that. It's something I wish I could say we could have fixed a long time ago, but unfortunately we just weren't getting the applicants and we weren't being able to get them trained in a timely fashion,
So nobody is ever sent to an actual voicemail where they will leave a verbal message for something.
I should be clear.
In 2021, we did have a voicemail set up for reports only. It was never for an oncoming emergency call or a crime check call itself. But if you had a report your garage had been broken into, 4 days ago, then that would be sent to a voicemail. But we had a lot of feedback from citizens on that, and as well as from our staff, they couldn't hear people when they called in and left a message. They maybe missed a number for the phone number to call back. So we got rid of that over almost 2 years ago. So there was a voicemail, but it was for reports only, and it was never a crime check call that got sent there that wasn't a report.
Okay, thank you.
So not today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have the data as to how often you're at capacity, kind of like we have a red light status at the jail? What is your, to know kind of what the historical times of that?
So I'll actually have you jump ahead a couple slides because we do have that
Okay,
information.
well, we can wait till we get there.
The next stuff's not super exciting, but we'll go. So the next slide is it's just my organizational chart. So just an idea of what our overall agency looks like. It's important to know that when in 2019, when we became Shrek, we became our own business. So we have our own finance department, our own HR, things like that. Next one. And there you go. That's what you're looking for.
So this is something that we report to our board monthly. And it started very small and now it's gotten big because a lot of people want to know the statistics of what's happening and when it's happening. And so we do a 12-month rolling statistical graph, and it's an average of last year compared to this year. And so you can see the amount of calls that are coming in on 911 and the amount of calls that are coming in on Crime Check. So that red bubble right there, that 13%, just draw your attention to that, because that's the actual percentage of incoming Crime Check calls that come in on our non-emergency line that are actual reports. All of the rest of that is all goes over to law enforcement or to fire or elsewhere. Everything else is an actual call for service that needs some sort of a response, some sort of a triage outside of just a report. So while Crime Check was designed for citizens calling in for non-emergency and reports, it has taken on a life of its own, and over half of our calls are Crime Check calls that come in on the non-emergency, but they're actually a response for law enforcement. When we look at numbers overall, and I don't have it on here, I just happen to have it in my brain, is that we had 28,000 calls last year that were emergency calls that came in on our non-emergency line. So out of 250,000 calls that came in, 28,000 of those were a burglary in progress. A shooting just occurred. My mom just had a heart attack. That's the amount of calls because they don't want to bother 911. They're not sure if they should be calling 911. So we've done a lot of public education to redirect them to really utilizing 911 what it's for, as well as utilizing Crime Check what it's for. So on the right side, you can see our average hold times. Those are average hold times for that month on those calls that come in. You can see an influx as we go through the summer. Part of that staffing, part of that is just call load. So when we reach our capacity, we only have 20 incoming emergency phone lines. So if we have a large event like an ice storm or a major fire like we have in our region, that will tax those lines every single time. If there's more than 20 people calling in, they're gonna get a fast busy or they're gonna get dead air. Otherwise, if there's 19 people calling in, that 20th person is gonna hit that message that says, please hang on the line, don't disconnect. Your call will be answered as soon as we can. So those are our average hold times. That's what we kind of look at. That's also something we report to the state when we're going towards NENA standards, and it's 95% of calls answered in the first 20 seconds.
And again, this is also reflective of new trainees or lack of staffing as well. And as you can see, it's starting to get better as our trainees are getting signed off from where it was.
And then do you see, I mean, on that average hold time, it's in seconds, so that's awesome that it's not minutes.
Yeah.
So
But a large event can absolutely make that minutes, right?
Yeah. But are you gonna see, like, if so many people are calling Crime Check versus 911, it would just kind of switch from one to the other, correct?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you. And obviously we answer our 911 calls are our priority. And that even if we don't know what's coming in on Crime Check, 911 will always be our priority because our assumption is that those emergencies are coming in on the 911 lines and not on the Crime Check lines. So those Crime Check lines, when we have emergencies, when we have large incidents, when we have something happening, those Crime Check lines can go. So that's just an average of what that hold time is, but those can easily go up to the 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, depending on what's happening. Next slide. So this is just another part that we report out on how many Crime Check reports that we have. We see that continually increasing. Crime Check reports are a great resource for our citizens. It's also a great relief for our responders, for our law enforcement partners, not to have to go out and take some of those reports that they can go through. And we take the report, it goes to their jurisdiction or it goes to their cop shop, and then those detectives can investigate it from there. So we do still obviously have a lot of Crime Check calls that come in. A year and a half ago, we were able to go live with our online reporting. We saw a huge influx of people reporting using the online features. That is a very minimum amount of reports that can be taken on there. So we can take assault calls as long as there's no injuries. So if there's injuries, there's a criminal element to it that we have to investigate that has some sort of a priority to it versus a cold call. We can take a lot of vehicle prowlings, a lot of unattached garage burglaries, those kind of things, but we can't take a vehicle theft. So we do have to navigate that with our citizens because they want to be able to, a lot of them want to be able to go on and just report it online so they don't have to call in. They can just kind of do it. That's just kind of the age of tech that we see right now. But we've also seen a big drop in our online reporting, and we're not sure why. We haven't been able to dial into why are people now choosing to call Crime Check for the reports where they didn't when we first went live a year and a half ago.
They just didn't I mean, were they not getting the information back to feel like it was properly accepted?
We don't, and they still get response from the police agencies if there's a solvable element, if you will, if there's something that they can actually investigate on it. Otherwise, it just becomes more of a statistic. And our law partners typically use that as a hotspot mapping. So you'll hear them talk about, we're gonna put emphasis here, emphasis there based off of what's happening. So we really encourage our citizens regardless to call in and make those reports, whether it's through Crime Check or online, because they use that data to try to break up that criminal part of it.
Well, and I think it's they need to for insurance purposes.
Exactly.
They gotta do that, but then that's where it like gets to that point where if it's a garage break-in or it just breaks into their car, it's not enough to report
Yeah.
to the insurance company, the insurance company to cover their deductible. I just had a friend that all happened with, so.
And we have gotten feedback that our online reporting isn't as user-friendly, but that's not anything that we can necessarily control. That's the vendor that we source through LexisNexis. So we do get that feedback, but we don't have a lot of control in that. We have videos posted. We have gone to different community events and talked them through it. And we'll just kind of see if that starts to take back off. But our Crime Check reports are still going up at a pretty decent rate.
Are you talking to LexisNexis to let them know the citizens are, I mean, to see if they, not that you can't force
Yeah,
them to
we've-
make the change, but you can encourage.
Absolutely. Yeah, we give them feedback on a regular basis of why this was cumbersome or why this didn't work or why it didn't make sense to somebody. So we do have that. Scott.
Oh, to your earlier question, Commissioner, I've had to file an online crime check report, and I have received email confirmation back that's been received in a number of them as well, so it does happen.
Thank you.
Is that the total, is the name of the program, the Total Cop Logic
Yeah.
report? Okay.
It's CopLogic.
That's the name of
LexisNexis is
the,
the owner of the
Okay.
software.
is that a common type of software that a lot of communities are using?
Yeah.
So you're not able to customize it necessarily for what you would like?
Not really, but when Lori's talking about the CAD, we were able to go to several different agencies across, we went to Colorado, we went to Florida, went to Texas. We've seen several different agencies and they have some homegrown stuff that we're really interested in doing. And we want to kind of look at that if we can shift that potentially to our new CAD software. And we have some really talented CAD folks that we have a lot of growth that we can potentially do if we can get into that. But right now we're kind of hamstrung by that software, but we are definitely looking for avenues and better software down the road.
Just kind of what we have with the technology we have right now.
Yeah. Any other questions on this one? Next slide. All right, so we provide these for our law folks and for our fire folks. These are our dispatch statistics. So these are calls that came over either through 911 or through Crime Check that have a touchback on our dispatch side that go back out to the field for either law or fire. One thing that our fire folks point out is that like the Gray Fire and the Oregon Fire, that's one incident. It doesn't matter that there was 200 plus resources on it. That's one incident. That's one call for service that we dispatched. Our law folks, their total is significantly higher than that because they have more volume in that, just not the volume in the call of like a large fire or a large incident. Next slide. So this is something that we're very proud of. One of the major switches in that we made when SHREC went live was to get our EMD side over to our 911 call receiving. So there wasn't that call into 911 and then transfer over to a fire dispatcher to initiate aid. And so we do that on the front side of our 911 calls. They call in on the medical and we triage it right away. So our hands to chest time is 24 seconds. Sorry, I can't see that far away. 24 seconds. Thank you. 24 seconds on our average. And then one of the statistics that we go up against, and this is a national statistic, is the time that from the time the citizen calls in until the time our call receiver recognizes that CPR needs to be initiated. And that is a 57-second average, and the national average to be under is 120 seconds. So we're doing really well on that. There are some barrier cases that caller may not be strong enough to lift that person off of a bed or pull them out from something that they fell between a counter space and a wall. But overall, that there is some really good recognition on our call receiver side. They have really good training in getting that. And our company, Priority Dispatch, they come in and critique us on a regular quarterly throughout the year to give us ideas of where we can improve our performance. But overall, we're doing really well across the nation as well as through Washington State.
Okay, so just so I understand, so time to queue is the 24 seconds average time. So I guess what does that mean? Because then hands to chest is 57 seconds, so is the
I'll take
queue
it.
just getting to a 911 operator?
So that's, it's actually from when they take the call and they determine that it is a CPR call, it goes from one CAD system to a separate CAD system, because we're on two CAD systems right now. We have our law CAD and then our fire CAD. So that's the amount of time it takes before a fire dispatcher will pull it out and dispatch it out. So basically our average is 24 seconds from when we get that call to when that call is already hitting the road for our fire partners to head out. And then the 57 seconds is us determining it's a CPR, getting that person on the floor and actually getting them to start CPR, so.
So your 911 staff is.
Yeah, they're doing that while the fire dispatcher is already sending the medical help out.
So that, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback from our users as well as from our citizens that there's no longer that transfer time. And that was a big concern, is that by the time they give all that information to the call receiver in the prior model, then they would be transferred and they'd have to give all of their address, their name, their problem all over again. So there was a lot of time wasted in that.
Yeah, I remember that when we first were trying to get it up and going, so.
Yeah.
Great to have it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have like a goal? Do you have a stated goal of what you would like to be at?
So anything
So
that,
then we can measure,
Yeah,
how
so-
you're doing against that?
right now, we're just trying to make it below the national standard, and the fact that we've done that is something that we're really proud of. We are internally can come up with a goal. We haven't quite done that yet because of the amount of new employees we have. We're just trying to get them to meet the standard that the national group has, so that once we're there, we can start to kind of compete against ourselves internally.
And I guess I'd ask, to follow up to that, so the new CAD system that you're looking at would combine the two CAD systems.
Correct.
So then that would be an additional.
That'll be some
saving.
time savings. We anticipate at least a 10-second time savings from when that goes to one CAD, the interface, and then pulled out of another CAD. We anticipate that that'll save us another 10 seconds.
So that would be a goal to
Yeah.
further reduce it by 10 seconds.
Absolutely.
Couple things. There's a lot of complexities into what Lori and her team do. It's easiest to see it in person because these things become, oh, now I understand how this goes from this queue to the other. So I would encourage any of the commissioners, if you haven't had a chance to get out there recently, go check out Shrek and do a little tour of them. One of the biggest beneficiaries of what Lori highlighted in terms of of shortening the call taking to dispatch time was the City of Spokane Fire, who used to be on where they would get a 911 call and then they would have to transfer it over to dispatch. Dispatch wouldn't occur until sometime after it got to dispatch. Now, with them being part of the Shrek system, they're able to dispatch much quicker. So the fire department, Spokane Fire, has received a lot of benefit from that. The citizens have received benefit. Echo calls. If you could explain what echo calls are and why these are highlighted here for the commissioners.
Sure. So an echo call is basically our highest level of acuity for our medical calls. It's basically when we receive that phone call, that person is legally dead and we're trying to bring them back to life. So the reason that this statistic is so important to us is that this is kind of our chance to save a life, and this is where we get to step in and be that conduit between us and that first responder that's going to get on scene and actually do the hands to chest. So we provide basically a chance by highlighting that and taking a look at what that means. So getting it out quickly, that's why the hands to chest and getting that stuff out quickly is so important, is that those calls that we can make a difference on, we want to make sure that we're doing that for our community. It's a good statistic.
Next slide. Okay, so this is the staffing vacancies. This is the projected for 2024 of what we're doing. So Lori had mentioned that we upped our report text to 22. In doing that, we were originally slated for 52 call receivers. We're now going down to 42 with our supervisors, that's 60. So when we look at actual bodies that are budgetarily filled, we're at 100% in 911, but we do have 12 people training on the floor. So out of that 60, we have 12 people training on the floor that are not capable of handling a call on their own, unassisted without a trainer right now. So when we're looking at what we have to present as far as how many staffing positions do we have, I don't have any more to fill. I just have to get those bodies trained. Our law group is the one that, and they've historically been probably the hardest to fill with bodies, just based off the nature of the work. is at the 53%. So we do have 7 vacancies right now in our law group to fill. Over in that blue bubble, we have trainees. We have one that just went over on October 22nd. So we're slotted to bring them over every 6 to 8 weeks for training in our law group to get that staffing number up. Fire was originally at 100%, but we had added 4 new positions when we took on SFD because of their workload. And during fire season, we got up to get 1 of them filled, but fire season came and we didn't want to train during fire season. It's not optimal for training. And so we'll start filling those again in December. So we'll be back up to 100% hopefully by the end of first quarter next year. And then for our report techs, we are almost there. We've actually hired them this year, even knowing that our budget doesn't start until January 2024. But we wanted to be ready to go live that first month or 2 of January and February to be able to provide that service to our community.
So where do you go for the training? Is it state training?
We do our own training in-house, and so we're actually in the process of revamping our training. We've overhauled our complete 911 training program itself. We've seen a much better success rate on training and retention than we have prior. And then in our law group, we're still revamping that part of it. Fire's been pretty solid. They came with an adult training model from SFD when it was the CCC. So we're just gonna have to update those forms, but overall, we do all of our training in-house. We have CTOs that go through extensive training. We just actually put them through an extensive training with a state trainer. We've hired her on to get all of our CTOs on the same page for what we're doing. And then our report techs, those are much easier to train in essence, just because the level of stress is a little bit lower than training on the fly of 911 or training on the fly of dispatch.
I'll also add that we do send our employees away to state classes when staffing allows us to do so. So there are local state classes that we can have them participate. And additionally, every single 911 call receiver has to go through an EMD training. That is, I believe, a week. It's 40 hours that they have to basically get certified as an emergency medical dispatcher. So there's some outside training, but most of it is internal within our own training programs.
Thank you. Talking about the next academy as a certain time frame and all of that just made me think, do you have to send them the Burien or not? So,
No.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide.
This is me again. So I wanted to just go over a couple of our highlights because I think it's important for you to be aware of the great things that are going on. That first little, I guess, square is something that we are extremely proud of. During the Gray and Oregon fire this last year, the evacuations were very intense. There was a lot of evacuations going on. And my GIS IT programs were the ones that basically created a mapping system and the ability to evacuate the way that we did. Additionally, if you paid attention kind of towards the end of that fire, there was an app that was sent out that allowed people to type in their address that would let them know if they were in an evacuation zone or not. That was a homegrown app that our GIS department created along with our IT staff. So extremely proud of the work and the collaboration that went on between our fire dispatch, our IT, and our GIS group that hopefully made a difference for evacuations during those 2 major fires that the county hasn't seen in quite a while. We received a clean audit, and I mean a completely clean audit recently, and that's something that we are also extremely proud of. Our finance department does a great job of making sure that we are doing the right things and presenting the right things as we need. We partnered with Shrek Law Dispatch partnered with our law enforcement agencies for the flock system, and we've had a couple of different opportunities to provide them information that has led to arrests and things like that. So that is something that has been in the works for a couple of years, that we were monitoring the flock system with them. We had 52 new hires in 2023. So considering that is our actual, right now, our current 911 staffing numbers, to be able to say that we've hired 52 new people is pretty impressive, especially during 2020 and 2021 when we were lucky to get 16. So we've been busy in our HR department, but it's been a good busy. We have won some awards. We won 2 state awards, 1 local award, and 1 national award. For our employees have all won those awards, and we are so proud of them and the work that they've done and the opportunity to highlight those great things that they do for our community every day. As I mentioned earlier, we are hoping to get a lease signed soon for that new facility location next to that the sheriff's new beautiful training center, and share that space with them. We completed inspection of all 23 of our radio towers. We do that every couple of years just to make sure that our towers are in good shape, that there's no repairs that are needed that could cause some infrastructure damage. So that's something that we do every couple of years. We were able to complete that this year. We found only 1 major repair that we have to have done, and so that's a good sign for us that we'll get working on as soon as possible. Our public records team reached an all-time low, which is, if you have the pleasure of doing public records, you know that is a daunting task. So we are very grateful for them. We have upwards of 500 to 700 every couple of months that are in our queue, and we've gotten below 100 multiple times this year. So that's something that it's a really big deal for us. And then lastly is we are in negotiations for that new regionalized CAD system that we are really looking forward to going to one system that we can pull statistics and things like that from, and will hopefully make our jobs a little bit easier and make it better for our community. So those are the highlights for us. And then our last slide is just our mission, vision, and values. If you ever are curious what those are, thank you, and ask if you have any questions for us.
Are there any additional questions? We asked a lot during the
Oh, then that's
presentation, so. Commissioner Jordan?
Thanks for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I remember earlier on you mentioned something about new legislation related to reimbursement with the city. I just hadn't heard about that. Was wondering what that's about and if there's any deadlines or what you foresee with that topic. Sounds interesting.
Commissioner Jordan, that was House Bill 1155, which I believe got passed in 2021. The way the legislation was crafted is it really only pertained to the city of Spokane. I believe that some of their council had lobbied the legislators to receive direct monies from the 911, the emergency communications sales tax. So the legislation was put in place, and it required any counties with a city of a certain population size, which was the city of Spokane, to work with them on an interlocal agreement that would either apportion the dollars to that jurisdiction, or the jurisdiction would say, we don't want it apportioned to us, please keep it at where it's at, and we'll continue receiving services from you. That's been a conversation over the past 2 years of the city of Spokane that has not led to a conclusion yet. We do need to, and I've told the city, we do need to have an interlocal agreement signed, determining which direction they want to go with that, because that is what the legislation said. But to date, they have not given us a decision on which way they want to go with it.
So the city needs to decide what it wants.
Yes,
And
we don't have a choice.
is there a deadline that that's supposed to be accomplished by in the legislation?
There wasn't really a specific deadline placed in the legislation, no.
I would say, speak to Representative Riccelli. He was the one who put the legislation forward. It really was a means of trying to get us to all work together and to be talking. And we had spreadsheets showing that the amount of, if they really wanted to do this, the amount of money that the city would get in revenue would be less than what we would charge them for all the services that we're providing. Just like providing the radio, that's why I was asking about radio. I mean, all those things we're doing right now and we're not charging them for. So Crime Check we're doing right now, we're not charging the city of Spokane for. So it's always been kind of an interesting legislation that I think was really trying to get people to get to talk through it. But yeah, so I think that's why there hasn't been a lot of action to require it. So hopefully that answers your question. And I would say if you have any further questions, I would speak with Representative Riccelli.
Is there an active discussion on it now occurring?
It was quite active during let me retrace a little bit there. The legislation required within a year to have an interlocal agreement, and then subject to certain extensions if both the city and the county agreed. Otherwise, it goes to Superior Court to decide. So we basically, the city and the county both agreed to extend it. The choice is really within the city right now again. And I would say the active conversations were about in the first year of it. And it's been fairly inactive since that time. The last touch was, we, the county, sent over a proposed interlocal agreement to the city about a year ago, and that's been the last interaction that we've had with them.
And it was prior to Spokane Fire coming on board with Shrek.
It was.
So now that Spokane Fire has come on board, I mean, again, it puts it all in a whole different light. So, I don't see that we'll see much change, which is why I think that it's appropriate for them to just put in the full amount into the budget and budget accordingly. And see where we need to be.
Okay.
Financially, it would be extremely challenging for the city of Spokane to take an apportionment. It'll cost them more to receive services from Shrek and pay them directly for those services as opposed to staying part of the regional system.
So there's no anticipated court hearings on that, right? It's be extended further out. Okay.
Yes, no, nothing pending there.
And really, it would just be either us or the city of Spokane that would say, okay, we need to go to the court system. The state is not gonna require us to do that.
And Commissioner Jordan, there's really nothing at odds between the city and the county. It's simply a choice by the city. Which direction do you want to go? We've already agreed on an apportionment number that would be fair. It's really just, do you want it? Do you not want it? And that's the outstanding question.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate all the information, appreciate you coming and talking to us. So,
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And please come visit us, we'd be happy to have you.
yeah, no, that'd be great. I was there pre-Shrek out there, so it's probably time to come back out and take a look.
It looks a little different, but a good different.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Yep, have a great day.
Okay. Okay, that's gonna take us to Kyle.
Sure.
So was this sent to? It's not in our.
I don't know if it's
We have
been
it.
forwarded.
Okay, very good.
Well, good morning, commissioners. Matt Sandford is here with me to talk a little bit about the 110 budget. And we'll try to keep you moving on schedule here, but we've got a few slides to take you through and the current state of things and how we're looking forward in 24.
And Fund 10 is the county road budget.
That is the county road budget. So we'll talk a little bit about what makes that up and where the revenue and where the money goes and how it comes in. So if we go to the next slide here, you can see this is a high-level breakdown of the anticipated revenue for 2024. So we get a chunk out of property taxes. We get an allocation to the gas tax funds. That capital number is a bit of a variable every year, but that's what we're anticipating for next year. And then there's kind of a miscellaneous wraparound of revenues from different fees and permitting and such. Go to the next slide here. This is just an interesting slide using WashDOT information that they provided to us with regards to the adjustment of how our revenues are valued in today's dollars. So kind of showing you starting in 2000 based at 2023. The left is just the fuel tax and the MBA. And then on the right is kind of that total. And you can see as the money has climbed, the adjustment has been relatively flat, offsetting any increases in revenue. Next slide. Our expenses for 2024, keeping it very high level. We have a robust capital program for next year that's funded, and you saw that big grant number on the previous slide. that chunk going to the operations building, it's primarily gonna be built in 2024. Some of that might slide to 2025, that's kind of a one time for that expense. What I do wanna call out there is that maintenance number there. That's probably the largest maintenance number we've ever discussed. And that's for two reasons, particularly, and we'll talk a little bit more into that here in a second. First off, we're doing a better job of properly budgeting for what we think we're gonna spend. I think we've historically kind of under budgeted for winter, as opposed to using our 5-year historical average. And then simply the cost of doing work. And we'll talk about some of the elements that make that up here on the next slides, but that's a large number, and that really only leaves a small amount for preservation, which is how we take care of the road system.
And so with the maintenance, including the 2.3 million for sign and signals, does that include the valley's contract with us on that?
Yeah, so that's what we're spending, but the revenue that the valley pays us back for those services would be in that miscellaneous number from the previous slide.
And then there's been discussion of them kind of taking that over themselves, is that correct? And do we know where we're at on that?
Yeah, we have a draft ILA that is basically, right now, we have a one-way agreement that allows us to do work in the city of Spokane Valley and be reimbursed for it, but it doesn't actually have a mechanism in it for the valley to do anything for us. So it's what we're just trying to do is bring forward a new agreement that allows that to go both ways. So if they help us out, they can charge us. If we help them out, then we charge them, as we have been for years. The biggest change is really with the signals shop. We're still going to do all their striping and signing and stuff, but we have had we had a little bit of an exodus in our signal shop here over the last 18 months. And so we're short-staffed. They have started, they've got their first main signal guy over there, came from our shop. And we did get lucky recently though. We just got a really great guy out of Montana who's been maintaining, I think, half of Montana's highway signals. So we're not in a dire situation, but this is a longer term conversation. The city of Spokane Valley has about 70% of the total signals in the area that are maintained. There's a couple in Liberty Lake, a few in Airway Heights, a couple in Millwood. The county has about 24, and the valley has like 8. So, but they don't yet have a place to house a signal shop yet. They don't have the equipment, but we're talking in that long-term play. We're always going to have some needs as, we keep a relatively stable amount of signals. Even as we add one, it's usually in a commercial area, so we don't keep that forever. But we are adding a lot of RRFBs and school feedback. So our inventory, especially for the smaller stuff, is continuing to grow. We're going to need to do something, but we're working very collaboratively. I don't ever see us going back to, we're going to take care of everybody's signals. We need to have some capabilities in-house. Long-term, I know the valley would like to be the ones taking care of the preponderance of the signals. It just takes them about 2 years to hire every individual. So it's a long transition, but that is the discussion.
And I think, it was partly with the annexation. We were a lot in the county, and then with annexation, then it suddenly has changed to more cities, especially the city of the valley taking over a lot of that. So even though it's 20 years later, just takes some time.
And I will just comment that, we had kind of a dire situation this year when we were down to 2 of our typical 5-person team. The valley had 1. Everybody played very, very well in the sandbox, understanding the conditions. WashDOT offered to help out. A couple of the communities got some emergency, contractor support lined up. Everybody understands that it doesn't make sense for us to all have big signal shops for the body of work, but where the primary shop should be, probably makes some sense to be in the valley, but it doesn't mean we have no signal shop.
So where does the individual in the valley, the signal operator, where do they work out of then?
They work for the city of Spokane Valley, so.
But they don't have a signal shop.
Right, they're just in with their traffic guys essentially, and there's all kinds of programming and different
Okay.
high-level functions you can do. Our real challenge was we had 5 very experienced people, and one by one, for various reasons, they either got hired away or went to other jurisdictions, and we got down to 2 guys with a couple of years' experience apiece. So it's a very scary place to be from a maintaining
Yeah.
signal standpoint. We were lucky to get this gentleman from Montana, and we'll see where it goes. You know, we do have an ongoing maintenance need, we'll have a base level of need for our county and also some of our partners. And we'll, like you said, everybody's working well together because we all need each other at this point, so.
So is that what you were talking about when you were saying you reimburse so with only one signal operator in the valley though, they probably need some backup, right, to maintain 80 signals? Is that what you said?
So we're still doing.
So
the
how does
lines.
that work? How does that work in terms of the money and the back and forth between the valley and the county?
So right now, we track all our work in the valley and we bill them
Okay,
regularly
okay.
for the work we do out there. Because it's not just signals, you know, we stripe the valley roads,
Right,
we do
right.
other work for them.
The signage
Um,
too, yeah.
What we want to get in place is just so if they get a couple more folks on, that they could go out, you know, and the one gentleman came from our shop, so he knows our signals very well, so
I
that, you
get
know,
it. So it
we
can be
would.
reciprocal down the road, okay.
Yes, we'd like
But
them to.
yet, not
help
yet,
us
it's
out.
not ready for that yet.
Like you say, that's what the current ILA is just us taking care of their stuff, not them helping take care of our stuff, so we just need to update the ILA.
Got it.
But that's where I was just making sure, it's like, were we looking to just happen to all of it or you know, in the future, so it's a future conversation.
Yeah, and it'll be a slow one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. So the next one is just kind of hitting on expenses, and it's not going to be a big surprise to anybody, but you can see our fuel costs have essentially doubled from the 2019 to 2022 to our current fuel. And as you might imagine, we buy a lot of fuel, so that's a big impact to our maintenance program in particular. The labor costs just in maintenance have gone up 37% from 2018 till now. And then you can see that bottom chart is just based on a 10-hour day. We work 10s in the summertime. For labor and equipment, the difference between 2019 and now, where most things have at least doubled, if not significantly increased. And that's the bulk of our work is, you know, you picture the dump trucks and the graders. That's a lot of what we do out on the road system. So it's been a large increase in costs across the board.
And so we're just very cognizant of, I mean, that's a burn rate that's considerably higher, and that's also some newer equipment and the equipment rates, but you know, for instance, I want to say the historic numbers for grading all the roads in the county was around $250,000 for a single pass. We try to do 5 in a year. Now that number is north of about $400,000. So, you know, I don't know that we're not going to likely be able to continue to do 5 in a year to stay within our maintenance budget. But it's those burn rates that are driving that maintenance number up. We're not necessarily doing anything any differently. Next slide, Ron.
So just hitting on capital projects a little bit here. You've heard me carry on about our team. We're very lucky. They're very good at getting grants and then delivering the projects. Our typical leverage rates are 3 to 3.5 to 1 on projects. So we're getting the most out of our county dollars, which is always the goal. And those projects vary. You know, they're focused on arterials, the bridges, the pathways, the safety projects like roundabouts, a lot of our signage projects. And like we talked last time, the bridges and the safety projects recently have been 100% funded, which is very helpful to the overall program. That addresses the really expensive projects in terms of rebuilding roads and overlays, and we'll talk a little more about treatments and type of road projects in a minute. But really, you know, what we're trying to do is just avoid high percentage county projects. We can't afford to have 100% county funded projects anymore. It's just too big of a hit to the program and doesn't allow us to most effectively put the dollars on the ground. So, you know, really that, the one thing I think you've all heard me say before, capital projects, while really important, does touch less than 1% of the road system. So, you know, that preservation conversation is always going to be at the forefront when I'm talking to you folks. So more to come on that, but that's capital projects. As we talked in the budget portion, the expenses and the revenues tend to balance, and they do pay for a lot of our employees at a very high rate, which is very helpful to the program.
And this next slide, sorry, I put this together over the weekend here with a little bit of haste, but I think this is going to pretty accurately tell the story. We've had a lot of questions about our utilization of property downtown, and whether that's Wilbur Vault or our fleet facility, or where our construction is on the mental health campus and the sign and signal shops. So I wanted to make sure we all saw that the property that Public Works is currently utilizing downtown and the kind of proximity. You can see STA is kind of our neighbor all throughout all of our property downtown. But so there's kind of an important order of operations when it comes to these pieces, and I wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page with what we can and can't do as we move forward with the next project and a potential future project. So as everybody knows, right now we're working on the Wilbur Vault property and working on our Public Works operations facility. That's in that top left property there. There's some synergy there with our fleet operations just to the south. And the teams that are going to Wilbur Vault are on that kind of bottom center property, at least the majority of them. Not some of them are already on that Wilbur Vault property right now. And that's where our construction management, sign, and signal operations are located. So if you go to the next slide, Ron. So the first property at the top there, that is the approximately 1 acre site that we will be vacating here upon completion of the Public Works operations facility. That is, like I said, some very long in the tooth facilities for our construction management, our survey teams, our sign and our signal shop. And that lower property represents the parcels at the Wilbur Vault. And I've just very high level laid out a couple of boxes on that property, as you see there on the kind of southeast side of the property. That's high order magnitude of what we will likely be building out there. So maybe some parking on the frontage there to the south. The blue would be our main consolidated operations building. And then, you know, that whatever color that is to the north of there being, you know, some covered parking and some storage needs that we have out there. But these are all more on that operation. We use the bulk of the site to the west there as all fleet related. Because our central shop, and we'll talk a little bit more of this in a second, has such a small footprint, all our sander boxes and plows and equipment that's in the midst of storage or waiting on a part or anything has to go there because we don't have enough places to park equipment and vehicles on our fleet property there. But you can see, if you look towards a future state there, we'll probably retain those 2 parcels to the south there. That makes up about 2.5 acres, just less than 2.5 acres, about 2.4. And then the bulk of that site in our long-term strategy will be available for redevelopment. We don't plan to use this entire campus. So I can't remember where my math led me. I want to say it's just under 4 acres potentially remaining after the fact. So, yes.
So what about the fleet ops current buildings? That
This is the next slide, Ron.
I didn't even see this
You're right on. You're
presentation
like
till
in
now.
order.
Okay.
That is the very next exhibit right there. That is our fleet operations facility right there. That's about 1.8 acres. It's a full city block. One of the things too, I love old Spokane buildings, and that building to the south is a really cool old historic Spokane building. It's awesome. I maybe shouldn't be holding tires in light vehicle fleets in the future, right? Has some very cool opportunities there. But so that is that nexus right there where we're dressed to the south. You can see that small little area in the middle there. And if you can imagine, when we're bringing in graders and lowboys and dump trucks, there's not much room to move around, hence the need for a lot of the space at Wilbur Vault. And then that bottom slide there is what's referred to as a half acre. It's for our motor pool and bridge crews right there. We're still doing some analysis on that to see what might be able to be done, and if we could potentially consolidate our operations and get off that property as well. I don't have a good answer for you there yet. We're still doing some investigation. And I just have some narratives on here. You guys have this, you can take it with you. Just kind of the linchpins here. So upon completion of this Public Works Ops building, we'll be able to get rid of that first property we talked about on the mental health campus. So that's gonna put an acre back in there for redevelopment here. But unfortunately, we don't really get to do a whole lot with the balance of Wilbur Vault until we do something different with Fleet. So you get a 2-for-1 if and when we ever build a new Fleet facility, which is that whole city block becomes available, as well as the other half of Wilbur Vault. So because right now the Fleet kind of uses both. But if they ever were relocated, which we have started some preliminary planning for, then that would free both of those parcels up, and we would have a much smaller footprint and much more of an operational footprint downtown with all the heavy vehicle traffic and the big pieces of equipment needing to be housed out of the core.
Okay, so just to reiterate though, so the new building is not for Fleet Ops?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's for the teams that we evaluated to have
the sign, signal, and whatever, what's CM?
construction management,
Okay.
survey, materials lab, and training is the full list. It's kind of 6 groups that all have a strong tie to staff in our building right here. That was a big reason for keeping them in the core here, because we work very, very hand in hand with the design teams, with the traffic team. The bridge crew really goes everywhere, but they don't have a lot of huge equipment. Signal shop, same thing. So that was kind of that nexus there, as opposed to, the Fleet really serves the districts as probably their primary customer. So their nexus with being downtown long-term is less clear. Or I would say, we make a strong argument for them to not be downtown long-term. Any other questions?
Okay, I'll talk about
I guess it would just be it'd be interesting to see what the theory really is. Just because you've got stuff north, you've got stuff south, so where that would really end up.
Yeah, and the preview to that is that we do have a pit site out in the West Plains that's we're no longer grinding out of. And when we clock the time it takes to get to East District compared to getting into downtown and out of downtown, for 3 of the 4 districts, it's almost identical. Well, for one, it's a lot shorter. And so only getting north is a slightly increased travel time, but west, south, and east are about the same amount of time once you factor in getting into town and getting out of downtown. And north is not dramatically higher because they can use some of the back roads between the West Plains and the north side. Future NSC will change that time as well.
Mr. Jordan?
Ron, you go back to the Wilbur Vault site. So you're saying, Kyle, just make sure I'm understanding that the ability to clear out more acreage on this site really depends on Fleet going elsewhere in the long term, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and are there any pieces of the property that are really of little use to Fleet that could be a more shorter term possibility in terms of other uses?
Well, the ones up above on top of the bluff, those 2 smaller northern parcels, we basically use all the space below. So there's a big topographical change across the site. So we would need all the lowlands. The uplands would be available.
And then, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but we don't use the upper area for laydown. It's a small amount of property compared to what's on the lower area.
But I think we'd want to make sure that it's developed. We have our development stuff in first, before we would look at surplusing that extra property.
Agreed.
It's partly I hate to surplus and people purchase it not knowing what the bottom part's gonna look like and what it's gonna be, and then we get complaints that it's like, oh, well, we didn't know that was gonna happen there. So I, just for my purpose. Commissioner Jordan?
And just a district-related question, I was wondering, as this is my district, and thanks for the time Kyle go kind of walking around this area recently. But have you guys made any decisions yet on potentially timely demolition of a couple of those kind of defunct structures, nuisance structures, you might say, on those areas?
Yes, we have. So we're gonna, our plan is to change order in to the early part of this work here. The northwest and northeast corner structures. They're nuisance properties, they're falling down, they've got asbestos. It's been part of our project plan. We're actually gonna accelerate those because I'm frankly tired of getting complaints about them and having to clean up the issues that are left behind by our visitor friends. So we're going to accelerate those two, and then there's 2 more or 3 more that will go down next year with the project, but I'm hoping to get that done yet before year end.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jordan, I don't know why you're very echoey. Earlier you weren't and now suddenly you are, so it's weird.
I'll work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please, Rob. So we'll talk about my very favorite topic in the world a little bit here. And this is just kind of a real high level look at preservation. And what this is it shows basically the type of treatment with a rough cost based on the condition of the roadway. So you can see up top, if your road's in excellent condition, you don't need to do anything. Then if it's good, there's some surface treatments you're looking at, that's usually chip sealing. Then as you drop down, you get into thin overlays, structural overlays, and at the very bottom, if your road fails, you need to totally rebuild it. And this is gonna tie into the next slide, and obviously this only applies to paved roads. Gravel roads are kind of their own thing, as I'm sure you can attest to by the calls you get. But this is, the arterial road system right now is in very good condition, and that's really a tribute to Becca and her team, who stay on top of rating all of our roads and then applying the appropriate treatment at the right time, which is how we stay cost effective. We've been doing Best First for 30 years now. Chad Coles and Howard Hamby were the ones that kind of introduced the county to that, and we've been pushing that agenda really hard for a long time, and you see it now. I mean, that's why our arterial system's in very good shape. The only challenge with that is it's been to the detriment of the local access system, which is a significant part of our road system. We've been 30 years without spending a significant amount of money on it, and it's getting to the point now where we would like to do smart things with local access. We'd like to be out there crack sealing and staying on top of that so the road doesn't degrade more quickly. We'd like to be chip sealing. There's some new technologies called scrub sealing, which allows you to skip some of the prep work and be more cost effective on local access, and we're seeing some preliminary very good results from our pilots that we've done on those. So we're excited about some of that, but really we were just getting to the point of wanting to spend more money on local access and having the arterial system good enough that we could look at doing that. But obviously these costs, the escalation and everything we've been buying has been a little bit of a challenge on that front. So really just hoping to start catching some of the local access streets before they start falling too low. But really just the chip sealing and all the things you've heard a lot about over the years are really the answer to that, keeping things up in that highest tier. This next slide is really a cost comparison. And what we're doing here is just showing kind of the order of magnitude for how much these treatments cost. The cheapest ones being at the top, the most expensive being towards the bottom. And then also along the right side, you can kind of compare how much it costs us if we have to contract it versus doing it in-house. And you can see for a county crew, crack sealing, we can do it for about half the cost of contracting it. And then chip seals, we're about 75% of private sector contractor work. And again, on scrub seals, we're about half of them. Part of that's because of the equipment. It's kind of new to our contracting community, so it's very expensive to bring in the right equipment, the right crews to do that. So we can be even more cost effective in that arena. And then finally, the chip seal there, you can see we're very effective on chip seal, always have been. We run about 2/3 the cost of contracting that work. And frankly, we get a way better product. We've seen it both ways. And our crews, both because we are better able to pick the time of year we're doing work, it's very susceptible to temperatures and weather, rain or humidity. And we just do a really great job. You know, can't say enough good about our crews and that work they do. We pull everybody out of the district and form these special crews for crack seal and chip seal in particular in the overlay, and they get a lot of work done and very effectively use those dollars. And then you can see, really tying to that screen before, this is why you don't want it dropping into those lower levels. When you start talking about a reconstruct, you're $1 million to $2 million a mile, and it's just cost prohibitive without grants in our program. Whereas if you can keep it up in chip sealing and scrub sealing, you're 50 to 100,000 a mile, and that's just a big difference. So, you know, that's really the focus, is keeping the roads in the best shape as possible. And really, we were very excited to start getting into local access, and we hope to get back to that point sooner than later.
We just wanted to talk just a little bit to just the history here with regards to how this as the shift has been used to help the road fund, and some years it's taken, some years it's not. There's certainly a decision ahead of the board later this year with regards to next year, and you know, I don't want to state how meaningful that number is to the community, but I can just state that it is very meaningful to the road fund, because that ends up having a significant portion on, you know, whether that's the debt service for the ops building or whether that's additional preservation work. Either way, it matters. I will leave that. And any other questions we can provide some answers to?
I guess the one thing I would add too is in our budget numbers, if you remember, we are budgeting $4 million for preservation this year. And that's about half of what we would typically budget. And that's due to two things. As Kyle alluded to, we're having a much more realistic number in for winter operations than we had historically. Frankly, it had been an optimistic number for a while now. And then if the winter was bad, it just basically came out of preservation. And also the cost escalation that we talked about. It's really kind of that twofold hit. And unfortunately, the only thing with a lot of give in our program is that preservation program, which frankly is the one thing we want to focus our dollars on. So it's kind of an unfortunate way that plays out, but would really like to get that preservation number up more too. Thank you.
And then take us to
Stripes.
Put those together this week. I
Good
was
job.
hoping that would help.
Thank you. I'm like, what's moving where? Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
good morning.
So I imagine the budget conversation with scraps is a little bit tough. We understand we've been operating in the red for some time, and really appreciate your patience as we kind of steer through some of this and right the ship, if you will. So rolling into next slide. So our functional policy, we've made a bunch of changes that now fall in line with our contractual obligations. Spending is more focused on mandatory spending versus any kind of discretionary spending. So anything discretionary really has to be run up the chain, make sure that it's something that on the backside is going to be beneficial, reusable, and functional. The backlog for spay and neuter, due to the volume of animals requiring and needing spay and neuter, which is everything that leaves our facility, Scraps historically has augmented our spay and neuter efforts by contracting those spay and neuters out to local vet clinics. We are exploring what it would look like to reduce the cost if we brought an additional veterinarian on board. And I think with that kind of big picture, big snapshot, it's fair to say there would probably be an additional support staff involved. So we want to make sure we get that right and run as much or quantify as much data as possible before we go down that road. We have
Jesse,
seen.
could you talk a bit about, you and I have visited on this, a little bit more about other values of having another veterinary? We have one staff veterinarian today.
We do.
What are other things operationally with expanded hours? Considering that with one vet, you have 40 hours a week, vacation happens, things happen, and what does another vet also provide as well?
Absolutely. So I think as long as being able, or as far as being able to pull back some of those outsourcing of the spay neuters, I think there would also be an opportunity there for lower no cost microchip clinics as well as vaccine clinics, anything medical related, especially with the addition of the new X-ray machine that we purchased earlier this year. I mean, I think the money that we've saved from just not sending animals out for X-rays has probably paid for itself already. So bigger picture, I think just pulling those services back in the facility would equate to a cost savings.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So have you run some of those numbers on an annual basis just to see, because obviously there's a cost to a veterinarian, but there could be reduced costs from sending out some of the services that you're currently sending out.
So trying to collect a little bit more data. What we've seen after the influx of people moving to the area, the influx of stray or abandoned animals after COVID, it's a little bit difficult to quantify that right now. So we just want to wait a little bit longer just to make sure that these are the numbers, stabilized numbers, and not numbers that we're seeing post-COVID. Just like I said, I want to make sure we get that right before we make that proposal.
And just as a
So
clarifying,
it's not in this year's budget, the proposal?
No,
You're
ma'am.
saying this is a, you're looking out for a year or two, okay.
right, remember when we presented to you last just on overall operations, we're trying to establish what that baseline looks like first. Having dealt with some of the operational challenges that Jesse inherited, we're looking for that baseline before we think about adding anything. Today, we just are mostly focusing on what expenses have risen that we can reduce and what revenue has dropped that we can bring back up. So that's kind of the core of what we're looking at today, so.
I would say though that once Jesse gets to a place of being able to have that really clear assessment of an additional veterinarian, even though it's not in the budget, I would look for the board to possibly be open for a mid-year. Hey, it looks like the cost savings could be this, the additional cost could be this. It looks like we have a business case to add one, and when that's together, then we'll come back to the board and share that with you.
Commissioner Jordan.
I'm gonna hold my question in case it gets answered, but it might be later in PowerPoint, sorry.
Okay, sorry, we didn't understand that.
I think he's gonna hold his question.
Oh, you're gonna hold your question? Okay.
So kind of alluding to that bigger picture as far as cost analysis for bringing on an additional staff veterinarian, we have seen that increased intake and increased animal abandonment. This is a known national issue, not just in our local area. There's a lot of places struggling with a higher number of animals. We are taking an active role in educating the public about the benefits of spay, neuter, microchipping, the role of animal protection services versus that of community rescues and shelters, and also the cost of impounding long-stay animals. So part of that active role is happening daily with animal protection officers. Our volunteer outreach coordinator has been doing a fantastic job with tours and overall just outreach within the community, whether that's through the Spokane County Interstate Fair or Bark in the Park. Yeah. So there's been quite a few instances where we've been out in the community to spread that educational piece. Our business model, we do follow the ASV guidelines. They are adopted nationally recognized practices and procedures to fulfill our animal protection services role, to include implementation of the CARS assessment, which I think everyone remembers is the only assessment tool that falls in line with the ASV guidelines. And that is to determine risk, overall risk, and then increase public safety. Canine enrichment, restore partner engagement relationships to facility transfers and adoptable animals. We have been rebuilding a lot of those bridges. We've had a lot of folks reach out, and we've reached out to many as well. And I don't think it happened as quickly as possible, but it's definitely happening, and we're definitely from the course of maybe 13 months ago, looking at a lot more community partners and a lot more folks willing to take on, obviously when they have space available, but take on some of those behavioral cases and some of the tougher cases for us. So some of the things we've done or we've seen that have been some operational challenges and things that have probably not reduced expenses in the short term, but perhaps long term. We did find some damage, degraded facility issues, and there are some ongoing efforts, both outsourced to some of the local kind of heavy duty cleaning organizations, and then some of it also has been completed by the staff. We are doing maintenance and janitorial services, so some of that maintenance is also being done in-house. Some of it obviously has to be outsourced. Janitorial services, we are researching low-cost maintenance, janitorial service options through AARP or Scaleskin, and that's just would be like the common areas to kind of free up a little bit of time for staff and to put those efforts towards animal care. Staffing shortages and overtime. So I got to give it to my team, management team. They have filled every position with the exception of one vet tech and one APO position. So overtime, we've seen an increase over the last year or two. A lot of those positions, when vacated, weren't refilled. The management team has done a fantastic job of filling those. We do have a lot of the newer staff members still in training, but I think over the course of the next couple months, we're going to see a significant decrease in the amount of overtime that we're paying out based off of those staffing shortages. Inventory management. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask, I know you had one important position that's part of your management team.
Yes, ma'am.
Which is, I think, the supervisor over the animal control technicians or specialists.
So
do you have that filled yet?
Animal protection officers, yes, ma'am, and that'll be our field operations manager, and that individual is tentatively scheduled to start on 15 November.
Oh, that'd be great, because I know you've been kind of playing double duty there.
I'm ready for a break, ma'am.
Which you know would allow you to actually refocus some of your energy on some of these other things you're talking about around looking at a second veterinarian, looking at other cost savings, looking at, the overall business model. So, well, excellent. I hope that person works out.
We're optimistic and we're excited as well.
Yeah, and I wanted to speak to that position because I think it's really important that you guys know the effort that was gone into the hire for that person. So they were really vetted with a great panel, but they come with amazing animal experience. So it's really going to complement the team. So King County and Wenatchee. He has actually been an APO in those areas. He has trained, he has worked in animal control. He has worked in really amazing cases where he's been able to really work with the community, but also with the staff. So this is a really good addition to the team, bringing someone in who really has done the boots on the ground APO. So shout out to Jess and Kat for really looking for that right fit for this person, but really wanted to make sure I highlighted that the person coming in has a ton of hands-on experience doing this job. So that really should round out their management team.
Yeah, any kind of, and thank you for that, any kind of experience gap, I think is gonna be filled very, very quickly. So, yeah, so inventory management, so we have adjusted our logistical flow of animals in an effort to kind of better see where those animals are going to end up, whether after a 3 or 5 day hold, they're able to go to the adoption floor, or if they need some additional time for settling. So just kind of overall pulling that lens back a little bit and taking a look at where we are now versus where we need to be in a week or 10 days from now. I think that view wasn't necessarily being scrutinized as heavily as it was in the past as it is now. So I think that's going to just ease a little bit of the roadblocks and whatnot as we move animals to the facility along their pathway. We have seen a dramatic increase in pet food costs over the last, I would say, with logistical challenges since COVID. It's kind of been an ebb and flow with pet food costs. They are a little bit higher than normal right now, I would say, but we are working, we're continuously reaching out, trying to find alternative means to bring pet food in at a reduced cost, whether that's through more pet food drives, or whether that's finding a resource to bring that food in for us at a reduced cost, like through a Purina or a science diet type of program, things like that. So we're definitely looking into that. There hasn't been a ton of movement yet, just because we're not a 501 Charlie, so we're trying to get our 501 Charlie side of the house to look into that and potentially get a sponsorship, if you will, on board with augmenting that food supply.
We have worked with purchasing, but still to no avail as far as getting a reduction in the cost of the pet food. And there's also a lot of supply chain issues with pet food right now as well. So it's been pretty challenging, that piece.
We've optimized some storage solutions. I think there was a slideshow that went out some time ago that showed just kind of, again, with the logistics of how we're storing food up off the floor, storing food on shelves. Everything has a date on it, and if you will, like back to front. So soonest to expire gets used first. Just a normal rotation of food, I guess you would call it.
Yep, you have.
And then also eradicating pest issues. We're in the maintenance phase right now. The folks that came on board, contracted in, did a fantastic job of helping us, assisting us with that, along with a lot of the staff who assisted with the cleanup efforts and just cleaning out some of the old junk that had been left behind.
And just on the note of eradicating the pest issues, we have, I mean, that, like you said, we're in the maintenance phase now. That there was a time when we lost thousands of dollars of pet food due to the pest issue. So having eradicated that makes a big difference in all the future pet food drives that we have. We now have a sanitary sealed place to be storing that so that we don't ever have that issue again. So hopefully that's in the past.
So loss of revenue and adoption. So we have adjusted the cost of our overall efforts, and that was heavily scrutinized as well, whether it was the price of cat food cat boxes to transport your cat, which the county was taking a loss on every single one of those. So we've adjusted that to just our local trends in animal adoptions, we've raised our prices to kind of fall in line with those local partners and their local trends as far as the cost of adoption. We've also increased special adoption and promotion events. The last one was right around Halloween, and I think there were 30-some animals that were adopted just on that one day during that adoption event. I think we lowered the price to $31 overall, which covered the cost of licensing, and then a couple extra bucks left over for scraps on the backside of that for operational costs. Customer service, we have implemented Percipio customer service training for all the staff. Not all of it has started, but here fairly soon. Part of the onboarding process will be, depending on which section you work in, some specialized training to assist you with some of the roadblocks or challenges in working within that section. We're also working on changing the workplace culture, refreshing professionalism, expectations, and standards, and also some de-escalation tactics and crucial conversation training for people that may come in maybe a little bit upset about a dog being picked up by an animal protection officer or neighborhood cat or something like that. Community relations and agency reputation. So we've increased positive presence within the community, again, through both our volunteer and outreach section. Our APOs, I think, are doing a fantastic job of spreading that education and working on that community relations aspect every day while they're on the road. And then again, through partnership with the Spokane Indians, the county fair, and increasing community educational tours like Girl Scout schools and whatnot.
Commissioner Jordan?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Hey.
Sorry for all the noises. Not trying to, ruin anybody's hearing. Just wondering on this piece, my understanding, and I can see the next slide, you kind of show the donations over time and how that's changed. But I was wondering, it sounds like there used to be a position, an FTE, that used to be more of a community relations or development type person who would kind of specifically be focused on building up those partnerships. Seems like the Hope Foundation used to be more active. So I'm just wondering if there's been any thought to, if there's a need to put that position back or to think about that as a designated FTE.
Wow, I could have planted you in the audience, Commissioner Jordan. That's fantastic. We absolutely are looking at that position. We do need to fill it, but again, we're kind of pulling back to find that baseline that we talked about already. Before we start asking for, we want to show that we can reduce expenses, that we can increase revenue, and see where that baseline is before we go after that. I do think 2025, we're probably going to be asking for that position. We're kind of dividing and conquering and working on those community relations and building relationship with the Hope Foundation, with our volunteer coordinator. She's been really amazing, stepping up and doing a lot of that work. We're handling it for now, but you are correct. We will need that position in the future to continue to manage that. Again, just trying to find our baseline first and see where we're at. Being fully staffed for the first time in a very long time is going to make a huge difference, I think. So we'll probably, in 6 months have a lot more to tell you on that side of it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just also, it would be great to do a check-in in 6 months. I guess I'm just wondering, usually those positions can end up funding themselves because of all the revenue brought in from donations and partnerships and business, relationships. So at a certain point, we may want to fund it in the budget, at least for half the year or something, just to make sure when the opportunity is ready, we are able to grab that opportunity.
Don't get me wrong. If you say you want to fund it, we would be very happy.
I just, to me, I appreciate everything that you guys are doing to try and rebuild the relationships, but I think it's really a full-time job at this point with all of the ups and downs and, you know, new people you've had to hire and I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there that if there was an opportunity to even use one-time money just to get it going, knowing that over time it would, it would bring in revenue to the, so.
That's one of the reasons these things were listed on an increasing revenue portion, because changing our community engagement, community education, these are the things that are going to bring up the revenue. More customers are gonna come in, especially if they're getting positive customer service experiences. If we're, competitive with, no, I don't wanna say competitive, but if we're following the same trends as some of the other organizations as far as costs for adoptions and those kind of things, that's gonna increase revenue. I have to give a shout out to Martha Liu and to Jessica Hines, who have also really stepped up in the social media engagement and some of the publicity that we're trying to get for the positive stories that are happening out at Scraps. It has really been a group effort. I don't want to make it sound like it's just been Jesse and I. We've had a lot of help across the county departments helping us do this work, so.
Just planting a seed that it might be, at some point, we want to be ready to do that. I don't think we're ready now, it sounds like, but if we were even to fund it for half the year in the budget, something to consider.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. And then along those same lines, just marketing in general is increasing utilization of social media to promote healthy adoptable animals, which we have most definitely been doing more of that. New social media policy implemented to help maintain positive community engagement, and licensing fees, which we've seen a little bit of a decrease. I think
we'll get some visuals
since
on that.
probably about 2019, 2020. I think probably right around the time that COVID happened is when we saw a sharp decline, or the start of a sharp decline. Trying to turn that around. Fundraising is working with the Scrapsville Foundation on ideas and additional resources for increased fundraising efforts in 2024. So hopefully we can get a couple things in the books and get rolling on that one. Turnover and volunteer loss. So we've leaned the volunteer onboarding process. So as it is now, if someone's more interested in the dog side of the house or the cat side of the house, they're pushed more towards that as opposed to kind of a general onboarding process. And that was to attract new volunteers and retain those that we have now. We've been working with our outreach coordinator on ways to attract new volunteers, and she's been out in the community working on that stuff. And then also recruiting at the outreach events, like the fair and the Bark in the Park events as well. Organizational culture changes implemented that should assist with a shift to a more transparent, cohesive team of dedicated professionals. So that goes along with the Percipio training. We've also been doing our staff all calls, and that's opened up a lot of doors and created a lot of additional communication, lines of communication that I think has paid off greatly, especially amongst the staff. And then innovative revenue ideas. So we have started a community cremation. There's the potential for a low-cost vaccine, microchip clinics, and potentially spay-neuter services outside of the facility with the addition of a new veterinarian bringing on board. But again, it was some of the small things like the cat boxes, just raising that price so that the county wasn't taking a loss per box. I mean, whether it was 65 cents or $3 on a couple of the smaller things, all that adds up and we know it. So bringing that up to fall in line so that the taxpayers are not supporting those losses, something that we went through with a fine-tooth comb.
Okay, so just bear with me on some of the visuals. We did these pretty quick. And the idea wasn't to give visuals of the overall budget. What we really wanted to drill down and focus on the things that have had significant changes and that we feel that we can make an impact on with the leadership changes that we are, at the organizational business model changes that we're making to make an impact here. This slide is just to kind of show you our contract cities revenue activity, just a quick snapshot of the activity that actually, that all of the calls that we're receiving. So the percent of activity and the revenue, in some of them, looks kind of balanced, and in some of them not so much, right? So as you can see, for the city of Spokane, the revenue is 732,000, but they make up over 51% of the services that we're providing in the community, and some of those aren't quite as balanced. You can see the city of Spokane Valley, they're only about 22% of our calls and services, and they're at 344,000. So that there's a lot of adjustments to be made there. We are looking, I think the city of Spokane contract is up in 2025, so we're looking towards different types of models to potentially look at to see how we can actually cover the actual expenses for doing these services, providing these services in the community to the different jurisdictions.
Kat, do you have the total for that projected revenue? There's no total on the bottom. Do you know what it is? Right offhand?
I did have it. No, I don't know. I don't know it off the top of my head. Sorry.
I can put it in the calculator.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Total. I knew I missed something, see. The next slide.
On that graph.
Go ahead.
I'm just trying to understand. There's the percent of activity. Where is that on the graph?
Oh, it's not on the graph. That's just over there. That's just over there on the little chart to the right for you.
Okay.
The percent of activity. The graph is just showing you per jurisdiction where their revenue is looking, right? So we get the largest amount of revenue from the city of Spokane, but of course, they also have the largest amount of services being provided in there. But it doesn't actually compare cost for cost. So if you look at the cost of impound and all of the expenses, the veterinarian and all of that, it doesn't, it's way more than what their contract actually covers is what we're.
Looks like Commissioner Kearns is doing the math.
Do it.
What is the 483 from the 483,261 from Spokane County? Was that the budgeted amount for 2023?
Yes, that was the projected for 2023. Yes.
And what are we looking at in terms of?
That's the general fund, right, Randy? Yeah.
But where we are year to date, is that going to be the same number, or is it higher than that?
I'll have to get back to you on that one here, unless Randy knows.
Off the top of our heads.
Okay.
Well, no, I just think, it'd be good to know. Because today you're presenting on like your budget for next year. Be good to know what was budgeted for 23, what the actuals are to date, and then. Right, but I thought we would hear that today. Okay. And then what the projection is for 24. Right, okay.
And then these last two are just, okay, sure, Jordan.
I'll be eager to learn what Commissioner Kearns calculates. So that's one thing. But secondly, so that 483,000 from the county, is that I understand that was projected. Does that kind of cover any kind of operating deficit? Is that basically from the general fund to scraps, or is there additional money that the county provides on top of that 483? I'm trying to get a sense of what is the total that the county chips in.
Yeah, so currently, the commissioners made an election a few years ago to pay all of the debt service for the scraps facility out of REIT, as opposed to sharing a proportionate cost of the debt service with our jurisdictions. So 100% of that is covered by REIT, and that's about $440,000. And then the county covers any deficit out after revenues are brought in and expenses are paid.
And how much is that roughly?
Around 400,000. Little over 400,000.
In addition, so that 483 is like a base contribution, and then when there's a deficit, we put in another 400,000 to cover the rest, plus the REIT for debt payments.
Right, the general fund covers anything that is not covered by revenues brought in by scraps.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, your total
Oh, boy.
is $1,658,686.66.
Wow.
So again, $1,658,686.66.
I don't know if I wanted to hear that. So the last two pictures are just kind of,
Just one
oh, go
second.
ahead.
So Randy, would you and Tessa just be able to send us, just so it's like
Yeah.
top of mind, the scraps budget?
Right, the scraps budget for '24 shows a deficit of 900,000 for '24. It showed a budgeted deficit of 730,000, no more than that, 780,000 for '23. It had an actual deficit of 710,000 for '22. And it had a deficit of 450 for '21, but we can give you more details on that as well.
Yeah, because my recollection when I became commissioner at the end of 17 was that it was a special revenue, it was an enterprise fund. And we were debating, even putting $25,000 from the general fund in, to cover costs. And then
We have a 10-year history that we would get to you after this meeting.
And then it was after that I think the commissioners didn't make the determination, but I think accounting practices are after so many years of deficits that it just rolls into the general fund, since the general fund is supporting it. And that decision was made not with the commissioners, this was for you. So it just ended up in the general fund and we didn't know. And this growing amount of general fund revenue has never been really discussed amongst the commissioners. I think it just kind of got lost in the system, I would say, over COVID and the last couple of years. So I think that's part of what I think we're trying to say is we've got to get back to the point where Scraps is supposed to be an entity that's covering its costs. That's what the contracts with the other agencies are. And so we've got to get back to that, where it's an enterprise fund, just like our other enterprise funds, because it was never, which is part of why I appreciate you looking at what's required, statutorily required versus what the things we're doing. And as some have said that, we were a shelter, we were never intended to be a shelter. We were, animal control. And I think the Hope Foundation helped provide funding for some of these gaps, and all of that. But it's always been a means of trying to cover its costs. So if we're almost $1 million, where we're going to be almost $1 million that we're contributing above and beyond, because that's above and beyond our revenue estimates. So it's really, almost $1.5 million that Spokane County is putting in. And does that include the debt service or not?
The debt service is a plus, and it's both shown as a revenue and an expense in your budget book, in the general fund budget book.
But it's really another.
That's an additional 440,000 for 2024 for
So it's
debt
almost
service.
$2 million that we're putting into.
$1 million plus the 440, so about $1 million. Obviously, 900,000 shortfall,
Right.
revenues and expenses, 440 for debt service out of REIT.
Right, but then if I look at this of 483 is projected revenue, that'd be on top of the 900, yes?
No, that revenue, so if we look.
So that's
if
part
you
of the
look-
900.
Right, that's part of the 900.
Okay.
Just that's just probably closer to what your usage percentage would be, I believe, as opposed to the 900,000 that we're contributing financially.
So it's about $500,000 in addition that we're contributing than what our usage would be.
Yes. Well, so
Okay.
I'll ask, just so I'm clear, percent of activity is like calls for service, right? So
Impounds all of the APO's work.
So I only did the top 3 funders, but so if City of Spokane is 51, almost 52%. If you look at how much they contribute of the overall total cost, the 1.658 million, they're paying 44% of the cost. So I mean, you know, there's almost a 6 or a 7% difference there.
And no debt service.
Yeah, the Valley is almost 23. They're paying 20% of the cost, so a little closer. But when you look at our 19.72, almost 20, but our 483,000 makes up 29% of that total cost.
Yeah, so
like 10%
as
out of
Commissioner
whack
Cooney
there.
said,
Well, but we probably should be looking at expenses versus, I mean, both.
Right.
Right? Anyway,
There,
because this isn't even all the expenses. There's an additional 500,000 on top of this.
These aren't expenses, these are revenues.
Right. But I mean, you could look at also the expenses and which portion of the expenses each jurisdiction is paying.
theoretically, these should be covering the cost of operations. They're not. Because the activities are such that it's driving more costs than it's generating for revenues on it. But yes, there should be a correlation between the two that we're looking at.
Commissioner Jordan?
Just to clarify, Commissioner Kearns, you were just using the numbers on this chart, right? Not the additional revenue.
Correct.
Okay. It'd be interesting at some point in time, I think, for us to update this kind of chart, but do it in a way that fully captures the true cost, or the actual funds that we're putting in. Because I think it would be the case that the city is paying less than 44% of the true cost of scraps currently when all the numbers are factored in.
Yeah.
absolutely, and that's where we're trying to move. Knowing that we have a potential contract renegotiation in 2025, that's exactly what we want to look at. Is you can call it a fee for service if you like, but the idea is that whatever those jurisdictions are paying, it covers the cost of doing that business, whether it's the cost of the vaccinations through the veterinarian, the cost of actual housing and feeding through the shelter portion, the cost of, I mean, even you heard from Kyle on the roads, fuel going up to over $5 a gallon has made an impact too, because all of our APOs are using more, have a higher fuel cost. If we can't share the cost of that, doing that business with all of the jurisdictions we're representing, then the county, as you pointed out, is taking the lion's share of that cost, including the cost for the building. And that's something that was done prior to any of us, unfortunately. But when we get to the point where we can renegotiate those contracts, we need to be really mindful to include, just as you said, Commissioner Jordan, the total cost of doing business and what that should look like passed on to the jurisdictions we're providing those services to.
Thank you.
Yep. And then just these last two slides are pretty quick. I just wanted to give you kind of a visual picture of some of the things. So you can see where it says IG Services Animal Control, that big blue, that's our contracts. That's our service contracts through the multiple jurisdictions that we serve. That vertical line is just to kind of show you that really it was 2020 when we started seeing the decline in revenue out at Scraps. And that's through our donations, through the Hope Foundation, the animal license renewals. The reason I broke that out is so that you could see we require the animals to be licensed to leave the facility. So that gray line you can see there, the animal licensing has continued. So every animal that gets licensed and we get that revenue, that's those animals that are leaving our facility. And in order to adopt that animal, that person, that customer has to license it right then and there. And so that's fees that are coming in. What fell off I mean, really dropped hard in 2019, 2020, and COVID, not sure what the total catalyst there was, but was the license renewals. So people would license their pet as they're leaving the facility and then boom, stopped relicensing annually as they're supposed to in 2019, 2020. So that's a piece that we think we can have impact on. The license renewals is part of the outreach and communication and education that we want to do to get that animal license renewal back up where it was. So you can kind of see on the chart the huge difference in loss there on the revenue for the animal license renewals. So just wanted to point out some of those big fish. I also want to point out,
So with the license renewals, because was it about 3 years ago that 2019 that we went to a different service to try to do that?
yes, we did. We did go to a different service as well. There's some stuff that's being done, online and more automated, and there's been mixed reviews on that. Jess, I don't know if you want to speak to it.
We can leave it at there's been some mixed reviews. They're not a local company, so we've seen some increased wait times for citizens who do pay online or mail it off to a third party and then have to wait a little bit longer as opposed to coming into the facility to do it in person. There's a little bit of a convenience fee, if you will, whether that's a wait time or a couple extra bucks to do it online.
So I believe I've done mine here recently online. So hopefully all the commissioners who have tasks. just putting that out
Do
there.
I have to license a snake?
I don't know.
I didn't think so. Okay.
One of the-
Sorry, I'm married to a scientist. I can't give you animals. They're not much fun to play with.
Another important line to look at, and this goes back to the fact that we are an animal control service, not a shelter. That tiny yellow line that's in between the animal control neutering and the animal licensing, do you see that little yellow line? That sliver represents the revenue we get from the actual adoptions. So the sale of the animals, the adoption money that we're getting, that's the tiny bit of revenue we're getting. So we're also expecting to increase that by raising our adoption rates. One of the reasons we couldn't do that before, because we were over capacity and we had not healthy adoptable animals on site. And so these are some changes that have happened more recently that hopefully that will increase. But again, it's never our primary purpose, adopting out animals, right? That's
One,
ancillary.
and we'd rather get them into homes and not have it be a huge
Absolutely.
fee to people to do that. So I mean,
Absolutely.
So it would be one of those I would expect that we'd have.
Yep, hoping to have an impact there.
Can I ask, what happened between, most of it, none of us were here. What happened between 2013 and 14? Because all the numbers went up.
That would be when
between
it went from being out at, I think it was at Spokanimal at that point in time, and it jumped and it went to the county regional.
Okay.
Scrubs is like.
That's when Scrubs, okay.
And then you're building.
Okay.
It's before we took the big bite.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kearns.
Just gonna say, because all the numbers went up there.
Yes. And COVID definitely didn't help us there, everything going down. And then the next slide just shows you the expenses kind of skyrocketing, starting actually in 2017. And then just continuing to rise across COVID.
And when did Nancy retire?
2017.
But the donations also went up from 2017 to 2020.
Yeah, in the beginning, correct. The donations went up from 2017 to
It'd be interesting
2020.
Yeah, look at
And
those
then
numbers.
it
Break out those numbers.
took a
'Cause
dive after.
you used raw numbers to create the.
These are the numbers from the 10-year that Randy's gonna send out. All of these numbers came from the 10-year spread that we were looking across.
We might wanna just show on that kind of, because I think was it 2018 or 19 when we actually remodeled and had the vet clinic inside Scraps and when we hired the vet? Because I mean, that
I think that was
affects.
2018 or, yeah,
It was
2018.
after I became commissioner, but I can remember how long.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna, again, those are the kind of the major milestones that would affect what we'd see in it. And then, like I said, kind of when we went to that animal license renewal with the new system, because I think that was 19. And then, I mean, there's no following up other than just sending out a renewal notice.
Sure. And there's more factors than just COVID. I mean, there's definitely other things that were going on. This is also the time frame that, you know, from 2020 to 2022, our facility saw a significant degrade. And so we were having a lot less, just a lot less community engagement, we weren't having like middle schools coming in and touring the place like we are now. Yeah.
Those rescue partners and whatnot started falling offline at that point. There's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, there's a lot to those numbers, but our goal as a leadership team is to kind of get us back. Ideally, this should be an enterprise fund in our perception. This is a service that's being provided, and there's a true cost to that service. And figuring out, like I said, figuring out our baseline expenses so that we know what that cost is gonna be hugely influential in any future, you know, contract negotiations, that sort of thing, so that we really know the cost of doing business.
Any other questions at this point? Nope. Thank you very much. Appreciate the information and, you know, more questions as we kind of look at it as a whole.
You know where we live.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Morning, Commissioners. Ron, we're gonna start with sales tax. Good. In August, I told you that if it was a good month, I would do the report. If it was a bad month, Jason would be here to do the report.
Oh, no.
Jason is here, but not because it was a bad month. Jason's here because he changed the look of this report and made it look a lot nicer. So I'm gonna.
Did you want the PDF or the link?
PDF's fine.
So I'm gonna let Jason go through this month's report. It will look different, it looks fresh, and I think it looks a lot better and better information. So Jason.
Okay. To start, we try to make it a little more simple and hopefully the information is a little more beneficial to you. For October, which is based on August activity, we're at 6.9 million, which is, it does show an arrow up, but it's relatively flat, really, year over year.
0.4%.
I like the up arrow. Don't ruin it, Jason.
All right.
It's up, it's up.
I'll do my best. Year over year, year to date, the up arrow that you're a fan of, 2.4%, so about $1.5 million. So not terrible.
To put that in perspective, last month, our year over year was up 2.7. So we are coming back down to our 2% that we do have in the budget, which is where I would anticipate us ending the year at. So just put that in perspective.
Thank you. Next slide, please. And that's a little hard to read there, but hopefully on your printout you can see just some of the history, some of the data behind it. On the bottom left is our graph, our chart showing what we've budgeted, our actuals, and our forecast. So we're pretty close, not to pat ourselves on the back a lot, but pretty darn close to what we budgeted for outside of a crummy February, which again would have been based on last year's December activity. So we budgeted 78.5. If we stay at what right now is the year over year trend at 2.4%, we would be short about 800,000. So not super far away from what we budgeted. So our actual to budget year to date is we're short 1.3%. So, which is pretty close. Next slide, please. Change this a little bit. We threw in some words so that hopefully I don't have to talk as much and you guys can read it. The retail trade sector, relatively flat. That's where we make most, that's where we generate most of the revenue for sales tax. So you can see year to date, year over year, 0%. So the unfortunate yellow arrow. For construction, year to date, up about 5%. And for accommodation and food services, year to date, up about 9%. And those three sectors, those are, reason we use those because they encompass about 70% of all the sales tax revenue that we generate. Next slide. And then we broke it out a little bit so you can see some of the specific sectors. So residential building, a slight growth, 4%. Non-residential building, a slight drop. So not pretty flat. Go to the next sector, or next slide. The economic indicators for used car sales, new car sales, anything really vehicle related. You can see on the bottom right, you'll see each category, and we'll talk about the year-to-date growth. So you can see for the month, it was a really, really good month, but the prior month wasn't so hot. So year-to-date growth, 2% for new car sales. Used cars down a little bit. Again, other motor vehicle dealers, pretty terrible, right? Not much happening there, positive. And then auto repairs and maintenance. Again, I know we spoke to this before. If the sales are going down and the maintenance is going up, it's because people can defer their spending more easily. So not the greatest sign, but not terrible. Next slide. And then food and beverage. So the 4 different categories. So like full service restaurants, like on the top left would be places like Red Robin, right? Something like that. Drinking places, it's a little misleading. It's just how it's categorized in the NAICS code. That would be like Churchill's. So even though I think Churchill's more restaurant, it's actually inside drinking places. Probably because of the high wine cost. If I was to guess.
It's just
That's what they're counting on when you show up.
mostly drinking.
I'm just saying. Limited service restaurants are things like Domino's, or fast food things, and snacks and non-alcoholic beverage bars. Lots of coffee shops, Starbucks, Dutch Brothers, stuff like that. So if you look on the right, it'll show where we are year over year for the month. Some of the articles that we read, it talks about how the activity is up. Excuse me, not the activity, the revenue is up, but the activity is actually down. So you're getting less visits. It's just because of some of the inflation, the costs are higher. So people are still spending a little bit more, but they're spending less often. So just choosing what's going to do it. Next slide. And then this is a new one. So we put in where we're actually generating the sales tax revenue. So this is the money that we're collecting, not based on taxable sales, but just the money that Spokane County is getting in. So you can see the top 3, right? The first and the third would be Spokane County. The second one in the red would be the city of Spokane. It shows we collect about 60%. You'll see that 61 on the left side, 60 on the right, just because of some rounding. So if anybody pulls out their calculator, that's the difference of that 1%. So we're still good at our math. But Spokane County generates about 60% in the unincorporated areas for our sales tax revenue.
And what's important to note there, this is a part of that 1%, the general sales tax. So we get 100% of that when it is inside the county. When it is inside of a municipality, we only get 15% of that. So the fact that Spokane, we're still getting 23% of our revenue is from sales inside of the city of Spokane. I mean, that means their sales are higher because we're only getting 15% of that, so.
It also shows like we're not as impacted by a downturn as the city, right? Because it's based on the destination. And next slide, which is the final one. This just shows where the sales tax dollars go. If you see on the top one, the city of Spokane, the same thing would be the city of Spokane Valley. The county only gets 15 cents out of that purchase of $100, whereas the state's getting $6.50, or the cities are getting 85 cents. Same thing for unincorporated inside the PTBA or public transportation benefit area or outside of it. And if you have any questions, if you direct them to Randy, that would be preferred.
Great. Next, Ron, we're gonna go to the 10-month results. There is an eye test there for you. So basically, for the first 10 months, this first one is our expenses. And if you, on the very left side, you will see that our expenses for the year were budgeted at 270 million. We're currently at just under 197 million, or 73% of our budget for the first 10 months. Now, to put that in perspective, 10 months of the year is about 83% of the year. So our expenses right now are running at under budget pace. We have some departments on the right that you will see that are over budget, and some of those are just on a pace. And some of those we will be coming to you next week with some, or tomorrow, that's right. It's the 7th already coming up. We'll be coming with you tomorrow for some fourth quarter budget amendments for you to review. For example, DEM, they went over with the fires. They had some overtime. Hopefully we do ultimately get reimbursed, but right now we will need some more spending authority to get through year end on them, and we have a few others. So expense side, we are looking good to be under budget. If we go to the next page, the revenue side, we're actually at 82% of our budget, so we're kind of right on pace. And this does not include the property tax collections for October 31st, because those don't post until November. And so even though our sales tax is running behind where we budgeted, from an overall general fund perspective, we should be at or slightly exceed our revenue. And it looks like our expenses should be under. So I think from a general fund standpoint for 2023, we should be in the positive side, even though sales tax is not meeting expectations. And that's primarily due to some one-time monies that came in during the year that we had not expected. For example, I know we're spending it in 24, but we did have the Monsanto revenue of 3.7 million. We had some other revenues come in. So our revenues we anticipate to be at or on budget, and we think our expenses will be lower than budget. So from that standpoint, we think 2023 will be a good year for the general fund, and we will not have a shortfall based on 10 months.
Commissioner Jordan?
What are the main reasons that we're under budget on expenses for this year? Is it really just staffing, or are there other reasons for that?
Primarily, I would say it is staffing. We did have some contingencies built in last year's budget for some contracts that we had over budgeted for. So, but primarily it is vacancies, yes.
Thanks.
So from that standpoint, we do expect that we will not have a shortfall for 2023, even though, as Jason said, our sales tax revenue may not make what we had budgeted. So, okay. Any questions? Very good. Thank you, Jason. Next, we can go into budget discussion, if you guys are ready for that. This morning, sorry for the lateness, but this morning I emailed you all some new forms to look at. The first of those is around, if I can find it, I stuck it somewhere. There, the rental car tax. Ron, you should have it in your email. There we are. So you had a presentation this morning where the Sports Commission was asking for $454,000 in addition to $332,579 of one-time money. That is based upon last year's budgeted fund balance of $382,579. You will see in this sheet that last year we had only budgeted a revenue of right around $587,000. This year we are budgeting $800,000. The reason for that is our 2023 actuals will be much closer to $800,000 than it will be to $586,000. So realistically, that beginning fund balance that you see in the 2024 column, I expect when we get to the end of 2023, that will be closer to $600,000. I do anticipate our revenue for 2024 to be $800,000. In the presentation this morning from the Sports Commission, they want to spend $810,000 of that between all the entities based on budget. The $10,000 difference is because we took the interest income out of this fund based upon the resolution for moving the interest to capital to put it into the general fund. That is coming out of there. The other things, we have an amount estimated for Avista Stadium and Plants Ferry into this budget. And then, of course, every other year, we have in the past been doing the courts out at the hub. So we estimate right now without the Sports Commission that for the current year, we would have about $424,500 left over of the current year's revenue. So if we do end the year at around 600, and if you do give them 335,000 roughly for one-time money, that will take our fund balance down to under 300,000. And if we do give them some money for increased over their 220 that they have received previously, even if you went to 440, we would be eating into our revenue a little bit each year. One of the things you did do in the past with their agreement when they were at 220 is you said if our revenue went down that and everybody else's costs would get paid first and they would only get the excess. They would not, they couldn't, we weren't guaranteeing them $220,000 if we didn't have fund balance for it. So I think if you do something different for them for this next 5-year period, you would need to do that same type of thing because the reason the revenue was budgeted so low in 23 is because that was based upon travel in 21 and 22 after COVID, and our car rental tax tanked. I mean, it's right now, yes, we're back. Everybody's traveling. You've heard from Larry Crowder. They're at record number of people are basically back to their record people traveling through, which means more car rentals, which means we're very flush in car rental tax right now. But if you do give them more money, whatever you do, I would still put that caveat in there. That we have to pay for the Avista M&O, we have to pay for Plants Ferry M&O, you've got to do the hub, and that any amounts going to them would be from leftover monies up to a ceiling, and whatever ceiling you want that to be, whether you wanted it to be the 440, they were asking for 454, but if you just said 440 because it divides by 4 nicely, they bill us once a quarter, just kind of anal that way. But if you did something like that, again, I think that agreement would have to have that caveat that if the car rental industry tanks, if we have another, God forbid, a flu season or whatever, that people don't travel, that is not guaranteed.
And don't we give them money through a different source as well? Correct. They also receive TPA funds. Yeah. I believe 28% currently of the TPA funds collected go to Spokane Sports.
And so remind me on the rental car tax, did we get it across the county or is that just,
That is across the county.
across the county?
So we get 100% of that.
And then we,
And then this is where, this is how, this is to your discretion. It has to be used on sports facilities or events. It cannot be used to professional sports teams. But this is why you do the hub, you do Plants Ferry, Vista Stadium, and this is where they use that money to then bring in events, so.
just so we can control all of
Oh,
this.
I was just, so I'm trying to understand the page. You just wanted the end fund balance to be the same as it was.
This is based upon last year's budget, the 23 numbers are. And so that would naturally carry forward into our 24 budget. The 23 actuals will end up being a little bit different. I project our revenue is going to go up. I think our expenses will be in line with what we have budgeted. So I do anticipate that our ending fund balance will be higher than 382,000. I believe it'll be closer more to 600,000 based upon the revenue increase we are seeing in 2023 versus what was budgeted in 2023.
And I think to answer your question another way, that, yeah, we did not plan any use of fund balance in the budget. We try to only budget reoccurring revenues to reoccurring expenditures.
But is there a magic behind the 382,000?
No magic,
There is
no
no
rhyme or
magic.
reason, just what it was and then try to do
So-
math formulas.
Okay.
So yes, if you wanted to spend $335,000 to construct
For a
the
one-time
new,
ask.
the new cross-country track, you do have that money in this fund to do that if you so wish.
And if you fully program the remaining 420 or something, that will not give you opportunities unless our revenues go up greater to invest in one-timers like that. So there's an advantage of having dollars in the fund balance to be able to say, hey, yeah, this year we want to put money in cross course. But that fund balance will then be gone unless you don't fully allocate the 800,000 in revenue in this year and subsequent years.
You had made a reference to, I think you said something about 5 years or something, or that if we pay that it will continue to eat in. But
So
doesn't the 150 from Avista Stadium, isn't that gonna drop off once the new stadium is constructed? So,
It should go down, which is why we plan to decrease.
yeah, so,
It should go
so
down
that, I mean,
some.
that
Yes,
doesn't do
yes.
anything next
Right.
year, but
And
years
then-
out,
And then
that's a
plans,
big chunk.
and then the other question
that's
is,
there.
what's on Plants Ferry? Doug presented some new course, phase 1, phase 2. What is that gonna do to the M&O out at Plants Ferry? Is that gonna increase it? Is it gonna decrease it? Yes, there's a lot of variables that we don't know yet, so yes, we could have more money. The reason I was talking about 5 years, because I believe they were asking for a new 5-year contract. And so whatever you do, I would just put that one caveat in the agreement like you did last time.
And Plants Ferry will also not only change because of the additional courts, but what do we do with the Valley Partnership? How does that influence those? So both of Vista Stadium and Plants Ferry are going to be different numbers in the coming years ahead.
So we have two different decision points then. We've got to update the contract with the sports commission and they're asking for a 5-year. We don't have to do a 5-year. We could do whatever, 2-year, 3-year, whatever. But then the other ask is for dollars towards this capital investment for the cross-country cyclocross course. Okay. But you won't know the total dollar amount that we have that's.
We are going
You
to.
won't have the beginning fund balance for a little while.
We won't have beginning fund balance probably until January, but I can tell you it is going to be more than $382,000. It will be closer to $600,000.
Even taking out the 424.
Yes.
Okay.
Just our ending
So it's
fund,
kinda hard to
our
know.
ending fund balance at the end of this year, which will be the beginning number for next year, is gonna be close to 600,000, maybe a little bit north of that. based upon current revenues and the expenses I know we still have to record for this. So you do have the money to approve that if you want to. I would round it off to an even thousands dollars. I hate the 579. I know they were trying to get fund balance down to zeros, but you know, even zeros, but.
Well, and I guess the question is like with this sports commission, I mean, I'm happy to continue doing what we're doing because I mean, I just think based on what happens out on the West Plains as well with the park that Doug has scheduled, I mean, if they have youth, you know, a couple of youth soccer fields out there, which we haven't discussed yet, I mean, these funds may be, some of those funds may be needed for that, which can go to that. So I hate to just program it all now when they get another major funding source. And partly it's the public facilities districts, you know, that owns the podium. You know, and so they can be using their own dollars to be promoting and supporting that as well.
And a lot of the revenue for heads and beds is going to come, you know, for the new track out there is going to probably go to Spokane Valley.
Right, it
So
goes
they
in.
will have extra monies to help promote that as well.
Well, your West Plains Park comment is a really good one because we don't have anything built in for what the future M&O is going to be out there. Regardless of what kind of activities, there's going to be M&O, just like we have Plants Ferry right now. You can bet on another $100,000 to $200,000 annually that we're going to have to figure out how to come up with.
Can you remind me the Plants Ferry presentation we got last year? It didn't add any additional fields, it just improved them, correct? Because I thought when we were looking at the aerial view of current day and the aerial view of the new, I was counting out, I don't think it added any additional soccer fields or additional baseball diamonds. It just improved them with turf, correct?
The phase one, I believe it was replacing grass with synthetic and putting lighting on it.
Yeah.
And I think you're correct, Commissioner. I think if you count, if every phase was installed, the mix of fields might change slightly, but the numbers are pretty consistent.
Yeah, and it adds additional playing days because
lights.
You can sweep the snow off the turf and still use them, but it didn't. I don't think it added the number of fields. Yeah, but
Maybe plus or minus one, but I think they're pretty consistent.
and then we save on the watering because you don't have to water. So yeah, I know we're in a whatever the water district is that they're in. It's like the one with the most with the highest rates. So that'll be a big cost savings there.
Yes.
Yeah. Was it?
I can't think of what.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called either, but they had like the highest rates in the entire county, I think.
So I don't know when you were making. So I don't know when you wanted to make decisions on this, but we could build that we will build those decisions into the final budget for December 4th.
I think we probably need to have another conversation on it here.
Yes,
so we can
you guys do.
make that decision.
Why don't we update this spreadsheet that you're all looking at with 2023 projections. So that gives a better sense of where ending fund balance might be projected to be, and it gives you a sense of what might be available for 2024. That works.
Okay, so there's kind of a overview of that one. We are at noon. Mary, did you want to continue?
Yeah, unless people.
Or did you want to resume later? Up to you.
We can't resume later because we have a health district.
Okay, you have health
So,
district.
yeah,
Okay.
so we're busy to some point.
All right, fine. We'll go to the next in your email. The next one, Ron, was if you want to go to the next page, it would be the general fund change history. So this is showing here we are. So again, they've got 3 columns now. The first column was what was originally presented to you on 9/5. The second column is the numbers we used on the 1023 roundtable. And the third column is what we'll be using in tomorrow's roundtable. The only change on the revenue side is we've added $220,000 of impact mitigation revenue. So that will bring our total revenue for the general fund to $265,404,000. So that is the only change in the totals. On the expense side, the first thing in the capital expenditures, those are the totals for the 9.3 million of special revenue that you've allocated to capital. Down below that, the Chase Youth Foundation, that was at 37 previously, and we moved that to 40,000 based upon our discussion at the last, a couple of weeks ago. The one under that, the Children's Waiting Room, which I did include a write-up. It's a couple pages back. Actually, it's the next 2 pages. That was moving their request from 83,000 to 101,000. They did give you I did get a write-up from Grants that talks about what they were doing with that, where they're going to, I believe it was 3 1/4 people. They talked about the number of usages that they've had. So like in 2022, they had 595 children. This year, they were at 563. And I believe that was through October, I believe. So they will exceed that. So that's why they are increasing that budget, is because it is being used. Below that, following that is an extra vacancy adjustment for juvenile. When we first put the budget together, we had 2 empty spaces in juvenile, and this isn't and historically they've been running 13 vacancies, just to let you know. This is 4 more vacancies for corrections officers. They are continuously running 4 to 5 corrections officers short. Whether they're corrections officers or somebody else, they historically run right around the 10 to 13 range. So this would move their vacancy adjustment up to 6 people. So at about 50% of what their current vacancies are. So that would reduce their budget. The federal lobbyists, you'll see that as a deduction and an increase in expenses. We've moved that from departmental to outside agencies. So all we're doing there is moving the budget to a different area. We've left the Geiger lease change in there. Again, this is based upon conversation with Al, just saying that the lease would not go up more than 5%. Health district, this is taking the health district up to 2,071,071 based upon emails that you sent out. And this takes the 110,000 takes tuberculosis to 400,000. I think the number they had was 401, but that's M&O and everything else. I just said 400 is going to be close. So we're going to be one side or the other of that number anyway. So
And it's on a reimbursement basis.
it's on a reimbursement basis. So based on this, we have 400,000 in the budget for that. Judgment clerk, I did not do anything with that, so that is still in the budget if the commissioners wish that to be. Martin Hall, we had a $5 a night increase to Martin Hall, which is $10,000. I know we talked about that last time. One of the other misses is the assessor's office had forgotten to budget for their taxable travel on their assessors, which is $170,000. This is part of the reason that their salaries and their benefits seem to have dropped so much, because they forgot to include that part. So thank you, Josh, for asking that question, but we went back and looked and it's like, oh, they forgot something. So that's the
Which one was that again?
That's the $170,000 for mileage, for taxable mileage for the assessor.
That's,
Their benefits still drop, but not by as much as it looked before. So their medical benefits did still go down, but this brings it up by that much. The next two items we talked about last time. Shrek Emergency Communications in their allocation to us, based on, Tessa can probably speak to this more. But our charge for our services, which is really for the
Sheriff's
office,
dispatching service.
is up 145,000 over last year, and so we are putting that back into the budget. We did not make a change to the travel for the sheriffs. We left that the same. And then Waco, those numbers don't add up in total. It's an increase of $5,000. But what I've done there is taking it out of outside agencies and put it back to the departments. So there is a $5,000 increase in the Waco dues. So I've acknowledged that $5,000 increase, and then I'm adding budget back to those departments because we will allocate that bill back to them, and that will be their responsibility to budget into the future. And then the last one on outside agencies is Wasack. Oh, excuse me.
Could I just ask a follow-up on the sheriff's office? Was that what they had come back and recommended
They had
after
request-
making some adjustments?
Their request, that would be a minus 362 if you want to change it to their request. This is still based upon last year's budget. They had requested 100,000 more than last year's budget amount based on the presentation of last week. And I didn't know what you guys wanted to do with that. So
Okay.
I'm leaving it alone.
So what is the negative that they proposed?
Their last year budget was 506 or 60, and they proposed a budget of 600 and either 6 or 60 in travel.
Their proposal was negative 362.
So their
Not
proposal
negative
was
462.
correct. So, and
Theirs was negative 362.
Okay, so it's 100,000 difference.
yes.
Okay.
And the very last line, you'll see that if we leave it the same, we have 107,000 to add to our $500,000 contingencies. So it would go to 607,000. If we drop it down to the number that John presented last week, our contingency will go right now at 507,000. Which
Okay, I
is
guess I'm.
0.2%. So
I'm just
whatever you
confused.
guys
I just
want
wanna
to
make
do.
sure. So when we first saw the travel number, it was really high.
It was a
I thought it was like $1
million.
million.
It was
Yeah,
like $1 million,
correct.
yes.
Okay, and then he came back and said, no, they do need
Right.
some additional because of the
So
different
if you guys
things.
want me to, I will change these numbers. I didn't have what are we going to do? I don't know what that's what they presented. So
So-
you guys let me know.
So, I mean, I guess they presented that that's what they needed and meant to have in their budget, not that they had over,
And he did say
inflated
that
because
one,
of set different.
and he did say that number may go down with the new training center, but he wasn't sure.
When I thought there was some additional training with the new training center, there was some additional training that they needed to do to make sure that everybody was, and then
There
other-
was,
for specialty trainers, and then other training should come down.
right, he said, for example, there was some training that the FBI may be able to do out there instead of them sending people somewhere. They may do it on site and reduce our costs. So if you
look at 2022 versus 2023, the sheriff's department added $462,000 in additional travel. We took it out in the next go round to level set it. They came in and said, we'd like to have 100,000 more, not 462. So that's the question in front of the commissioners is, do you want to put $100,000 in there for their additional travel or not, or leave it flat?
Okay. Oh, so,
That's your,
so really, if you went with what their latest number is, it would be only negative 100,000 in here.
negative 362 in here.
Instead of the 462.
We're adjusting off of the budget submission,
Okay.
which was the 462
September.
higher, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if we drop it by negative 362, it gives them $100,000 more in their travel than they had in
Okay.
2023's budget.
But this would keep them even with last year, give or take.
Plus
this
100,000. This would keep them even, correct?
Okay.
So that's the question, what do you want me to put into the budget? So that is the question. Do you,
Sorry, I
if
didn't
you
mean to
want
stop
me
you,
to
just
put
wanted
their
to
presentation.
get clarity on that.
No, that's fine, if you want me to put their presentation into the budget, that minus 462 is gonna change to minus 362.
Oh, so it actually adds another 100,000 at the bottom?
Yes.
Okay.
It is an
Thank
extra
you.
100,000 of expense, yes. And then I would change the contingency from 107 down to 7,000. The additional contingency. But that's the question, what do you want me to put into this budget?
So can I just ask at the bottom, so we're 760,000 difference from September, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
No.
Continue to balance the budget. We're right now balanced. Original revenues versus expenses as of 11/7 were balanced. As of 9/5, we had a $760,000 surplus that was pre-putting any capital dollars in there.
I've taken the surplus out. Originally, we had
And
a
then,
surplus.
and so you still, with this budget, it balances,
Yes.
so we still have these options around,
Yes.
if there's other things that we identify, we need to review. Okay.
Yes, so my first question is, what do you want to do with the sheriff's travel? Do you want to?
Question on your face, Josh.
We're just trying to figure it out.
So,
We don't have to decide today, it's just something.
right,
that-
but it is a question we will need to answer before we get to December 4th.
Yeah.
For example, in 2021, their travel was 219,000 rounded. And this is in your binder, in 2022, I guess lost travel. How is that?
Travel or travel and training?
Just the travel itself, 4,350. Travel in 2022 was 404,000. Their 23 budget was 560. Their presentation was requested 660 for 24. 23, their year to date wasn't trending, but I don't know what travel they have scheduled for the next few months, because that runs out, of course, it takes a while to go through.
Right, and I guess it's some of that travel for the people that have to go for the training.
Right, some of it,
New academy, like Belia,
right,
that's, they have another line in their budget for recruiting travel. Oh no, that's a different line. Belia is, a pretty low cost.
it's included.
It's included in that 560?
Yeah,
Right, you still gotta travel back and forth.
yes, and they have meals and stuff like that, that goes into their travel budget.
I thought that the number that was in the budget book, and I can look it up, was like almost double.
Oh,
It was, and
is.
then they've reduced, that's
Yeah,
what this
so-
reduction is.
right, so they said, their original budget was $1,022,000, but they said they really only needed to be 660, was John's presentation.
They were like duplicating
They had
travel
some
and
double-
training and
yes.
stuff, okay.
And BLIA is a separate line in the budget. It was budgeted for 90,000 for 2024, and they actually spent 81,000 in 2022.
We pulled travel out in round 2 of the budget. We pulled all their travel increases out until they came and presented. So that's what the 462 negative represents.
Got it.
It's
And they
level with last year
Yes.
right now.
And they presented that they needed 100,000 more, so if that's what you want in the budget, I will put that in there. That changes the -462 to -362. And I will then just reduce the contingency by $100,000 to make the budget balance. I don't have to decision, I don't have to have a decision today, but if I could get one before I go out, it would be great.
And if it's in contingency and we do a budget amendment next year, if it becomes an issue, we always have that flexibility. So.
However you want it.
I split the difference, just give me an extra
50?
50.
That seems reasonable. And if, you know, if there's really some stuff going on,
All right.
I'm just
Yeah, I mean,
hopeful
if
that.
they come up short, they can always come to us and say, hey, but if they don't reach that number, we're not gonna scoop that money back until the end of the year, until it all rolls back over when it's not. So the maximum amount of flexibility would be a lower amount, but.
Perfect. We will make that change. So that's kind of where we're at. That within the very last line, the contingency then, that will, instead of being $107,000 increase to the $500,000 we already budgeted, that would change that to $57,000, which will give us going into next year a contingency of $557,000, which is about 0.2% of our budget. So it's very small contingency. We don't have a lot of room for error. So, but I think we budgeted sales tax a lot more realistic than our original budget. So I feel good about it. Okay. Next, any more questions, or we'll go on to the next page? Next 2 pages for you really talk about Vanessa Behan. That is, Chris.
Mr. Jordan?
Just make sure I heard, were you saying 50,000 for the additional travel for the sheriff's office?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I won't go through this, but this is if you had any questions on why their request was for an additional $18,000. These next 2 pages, I did email them to you this morning. I apologize for the lateness. But these next 2 pages kind of go through, again, the numbers, the stats, everything like that, and what their costs are, okay? You can go to the next one, Ron. Let's go to the next one. So that's the Vanessa Behan, so go to now we'll get to capital. You'll definitely want to not look at that on the screen. That will hurt your eyes. Capital matrix, I would definitely look at your email if you want to look at it, or Gina, if you can make a quick copy or if you want to go make a couple copies. Just updating the capital sheet. A couple of the requests, the very last sheet that I sent out today, there was a question on Doug's in regard to the Bidwell Park aquatics concession trailer, and it seemed to be a repeat of a different one. They really are looking at a concession trailer out there. And so I have also included in your packet at the end of this, the very last page of your packet is an updated sheet from Doug on that capital request. Also, there were some questions you had last time on the sheriff's office. There was a FLIR on there, which was included in the cost of the helicopter, so we took the FLIR out. There were some vehicles at the bottom, which were part of their vehicle purchase that was included at the top. Had a meeting with Kevin and Chris, and so we took out a bunch of duplications that were in the sheriff's area of the budget. So took out a bunch of those. Really nothing else much has changed, other than if you look on the first page under facilities, we changed the funding for campus expansion to be more on the 9.3. Again, that is something we can, if anything ever did happen and we decided that we were going down that road, we would then have that conversation. This is preliminary. This is really helping just fill out the 6-year CIP that will be part of the CFP once the budget is adopted.
Again, on the trailer at Bidwell Park.
Yes.
Like, we get that it is a trailer.
It really-
but Our
it is.
question was why? It
Um,
seemed the one that was there was adequate, at least.
Here, Tessa, go make some copies of this. Sorry.
No, just.
No, it's falling apart apparently.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It's 20+ years old.
Oh, so it wasn't new when they.
No,
did
no,
the-
yeah.
Let me read aloud.
Print it.
Originally purchased and used, the existing concessions trailer is 20+ years old and falling apart. It is also undersized for the recently expanded aquatic facility operations. A replacement trailer will provide a safer space and allow for increased concession sales, resulting in happier customers, employees, and greater revenues.
Written by Doug.
So if,
Your constituents.
The hot dogs tasted fine when I bought them from the other trailer, but okay.
that, again, that's up to you. It is on the list. Also, you'll see in Fair and Expo, we are still working with Doug and Aaron on updating based upon their priorities, based upon the credit enhancement. This will get tweaked one more time, and then we will have to come back to the commissioners. This is what they would like to do with that. Are you okay with that? So we're not quite ready for that. Doug did send me something on Friday, but I haven't had time to review it and put it into this presentation.
Essentially, it's the one-time funds, the 1.273. Right now, the showers and restrooms at the campgrounds, I've asked Doug and to talk with Aaron and see, okay, what would be the next priority? Is it fire suppression, sprinklers? Is it additional amenities at the campgrounds that might improve their longer season use of it? So those dollars do not have to be spent all in 2024. That's what's available for it. So that will likely be revised again to say where they're recommending those additional one-time funds be purposed at.
We have a spreadsheet in our binder, right, on read 1 and read 2.
Other thing I think we wanted to call out, Randy, is on so Plants Ferry Park and West Plains Park. We had the presentation last week on Plants Ferry, knowing that 5 million in ARP was earmarked for it. Their estimates have come back at 6 to, on a higher side, I can't remember the exact number.
It's close to 10, not quite 10, but
Yeah.
close to 10.
We've only left the 5 million here, presuming right now there's no intent to put more dollars from the county ARP or other sources beyond that. West Plains is a little bit different. They were given $6 million. Projecting to spend $800,000 for the duration of this year, which leaves them 5.2 remaining. Their initial estimates are coming back, they need 5.5. So you have highlighted in yellow there. Do you want to put more money into West Plains Park, or do you want them to say, nope, you'll live with your 6 million, you'll have to reduce some of the amenities or, whatever the facilities are, stay within your budget of 6 million total.
For Plantsbury.
That
No,
one's
this-
for West Plains, it's West Plains Park. So, that was my inclination, but I wanted to just make sure I raised it with you all, because you'll get a West Plains presentation here pretty soon, but you've already seen the Plants Ferry one, and we're hearing that's the same thing on West Plains. My inclination was just to keep it at 0 and say live within your $6 million budget.
That's the ARP budget that we.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
I kind of feel that on both of them. Like we feel it's a nice chunk of change for ARP dollars.
Yeah.
So.
It's always something they can come back later and they can ask for a
$300,000
That's what
deficit.
that's what we're hearing, yes.
So maybe that's a particular part of the park that we'll have to get some investment later.
And I just don't know what that
Yeah,
would be.
we
What
should
is,
look
what
at
is the reduction? That's what is gonna have to be presented. I believe he had, because the commissioners were planning on meeting on November 20th, well, we had a preliminary on November 20th. He was gonna try to schedule an update on the West Plains Park on that day as well. So you could get another update. If that's not looking to meet that day, then we'll reschedule for the time.
I mean, if they're gonna put fields out there, something, then real estate or the rental tax dollars could go to that. Which is why I hate to just give it to sports commission at this point in time. Like, I'm happy to fund them at the level we've been funding them, but kind of, you know, worried of doing more if those can be used for, you know, that. Because West Plains really kind of doesn't have a lot of stuff out there for them.
Correct.
I know they're hurting for youth soccer fields and baseball fields, you know, just all that.
Well, what we could do, right,
Balancing act, we need to make sure we're spending our money as efficiently as we can, and when certain dollars have strings attached, then it needs to go to a specific, it makes more sense to spend it one place than it does another, so, yeah, you're totally right.
Maybe we, you know, their ask was what, towards the cross-country course? 330?
335.
Maybe we can only do a portion of that, and they can, you know, that's why it would be good to look at their entire budget.
Well, it wasn't
Right.
that, it was the
It's
increase on
increase
the
in sports commission.
yearly one, it wasn't the one-time ask that was really the concern, it was
So
the,
the sports commission,
on-
we've traditionally given them $200,000 out of that
Right.
fund. They want 400 and some thousand.
Oh, was that?
Their
in the
request today was
presentation?
454 a year.
there were
Almost
two
double.
asks.
Oh.
Yeah, they had two Fs.
Yeah.
I missed that part. I was like, oh, 220, and then, you know, a little bit for the cross-country course, great.
No, they asked for 440.
They were-
Double the amount.
Yeah, they were
Okay.
more than doubling the
Okay.
amount of the
All right.
220, so.
So we have to really hunker down and decide what to do there, but it would be good to know for this park, if there are play fields envisioned, then potentially some of this could go, some of the.
And I haven't seen the renderings yet to look like it. We've seen Plantsphere, we know it's the fields with lighting synthetic. This is gonna be more of, you know, it's playground and park and other amenities out there. I just don't know what all those things are there.
Well, and to keep in, it's only 10 acres, right, so, I mean, it's not, it can't be something massive, I mean, 10
No.
acres, you're limited, so,
But even if you got a couple of soccer fields.
well, a couple of soccer fields, you're pretty much, you don't have a whole lot of land left out there. I mean, think of Bidwell Park is like 20 acres. So cut that in half. I mean, there's not a whole lot you fit on 10 acres before, you know, and you gotta have some space in between what's out there. So I don't know. I don't know what the vision is for that West Plains Park. I mean, you can only fit so much on a public park of 10 acres. So I don't know.
We could always shift, I mean, because the ARP dollars was as a whole, right? It was,
It is 8 total that went to the two parks, right?
You gave
Wasn't it?
11.
11, I'm sorry,
5 and
11.
6.
so that was a
Right,
whole amount, so they can always internally shuffle some of that, and then some of this could go, some of the rental tax could go to Plansbury. For the little bridge, I mean, to make up for that difference, so that's why I just hate to give the extra away. I mean, I'm happy to fund what we've funded with the sports commission, but I think there's too many other potentials right now. And again, the sports commission, you know, can get funding from the public facilities district as well, since it's their facility. Commissioner Jordan.
It wasn't terribly clear to me this morning either what the increase was. Did they state pretty clearly what the reason for that increase to their regular budget is that they're asking for?
I think they're making, I guess I knew, because I was asking last week kind of how much we've given in the past. So I think they are making a play with the podium that they're doing all this additional sports marketing for it, but that's also part of what the role of the public facilities district is. because they do all the marketing for the arena, and so this is their facility. That's why I'm just kind of confused why it's suddenly the sports commission's problem and not the public facilities district. Because again, that's what the tax goes to, for the public facilities district.
It wasn't clear if it's for like 3 more FTE plus like putting in bids for specific events. Like I'll go back to the presentation, but I didn't really hear why the extra 200,000, right, give or take.
I don't think it was clearly articulated.
Right, so if we, just going back to that original rental car tax, I mean, so 2023 was 220,000 was what we gave them. And then you didn't have a number in this year's.
Correct.
Because you were letting them
Because
present.
and the contract is expiring, so we need a new contract.
Again,
So we don't do a contract.
I'm
with-
happy to do the contract based on what we've done in the past, and then it just on an annual basis, they can, based on what we have available.
Perfect, we can start working that up.
Yeah, I would just like to get more clarity, and if they're asking other entities for additional revenue as well, or the other sources of revenue.
The only thing that was clear to me is on the cross course. They have a request of 4.4 million into LTAP, which is the Valley's Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. And they mentioned something from RCO or the state of
They're gonna ask 600.
400,000,
Right, but that's for the
That's for
capital
cross course.
investment.
And
I'm
did
talking
not
about their operations.
get a sense on what.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the city of Spokane Valley's Parks Department then, would be their operations. I don't think that was the sports commission. I think the sports commission just wants to try to help get these companies in, or events in. Commissioner Jordan?
On the field, track and field piece of it, did they say, and I know they're going to give us more detailed, budget for that project, but did they say that they have secured the 4-point-something million already, or is that something they're asking for?
I think Mike said that they had confirmation from the LTAC committee that they were gonna give that.
They haven't had council action yet.
Council
But council
has
is
to-
supporting.
See, the Valley just has to approve that final.
It's not official, but it's likely.
Yes.
Oh,
And then what the sports commission, I mean, they were there helping get support, but I don't know that they're getting paid unless the Valley's paying them separately. Because the Valley's getting their own TPA money now, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
So yeah, so I don't know what they're getting from the Valley.
But that's what the 4.6.
Yeah, that's.
Tourism promotion area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all, yeah.
So I didn't think there was that much, and their TPA is not gonna be that big.
Probably,
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't remember the beds, I'm gonna say it's a quarter of what the cities are, and the cities is the vast majority of the county's TPA.
And if the TPA is increasing, then they could seek an additional increase from that.
Right, they may adjust their percentages. They bring that resolution, I believe, annually to the board.
So they're split. Not sure. Yeah. I'm not excited to use the rental car tax dollars because there's so few that we actually can distribute. So.
Got that marching order, we will work on that.
So,
So
I'm
if you
sorry,
have more questions, then
I'm
we need to
not
reach
making
out.
a decision today. I need lots more information on why they're asking for double for operations, and then, because to me, I'm kind of like, well, they need to choose. Do they want more towards their annual operations to market, or do they want money for the cross country? What is more important to them? Right now?
You gonna reach out to them?
Yeah, I can do follow, I mean, this is the first time I've been presented the information, so.
It's the first time any of
Yeah.
us have.
Yeah, so I just, And they're supposed to get, they're supposed to get it back to us with a full costing out of the capital.
For the Valleys Park.
Yes.
So, which is, I don't think any of that's operations for.
No, I'm sorry. They're asking for 400,000 toward their operations for Spokane Sports, right?
445.
454.
400 is what is on the slide.
Separate from the
Right.
cross course.
That's what I'm
Not
saying when I
under
say operations. I mean for them to operate their business. And then they're asking,
But we also give them 1.2 million out of the TPA for their business. So that's not their only
oh yes, I get it.
operating.
They didn't show us their whole budget.
Probably a better presentation is to show what is your entire operating budget, where are your sources of funds coming from today? How much of it does the county make up?
I would be happy to follow up with some questions
You can also
and
do the same thing.
I can forward any information on to everybody.
Why don't we do it? We'll send them a follow-up from the commissioner's request. I'm hearing no decisions today on cross course or what the ongoing future 1 year, 5 year rental car tax for their operations will be. We'll ask them for the capital budget for the cross course, and we'll ask them for their operating budget with funding source identified.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with the one time to build the course, the capital, but yeah,
The operating.
there's more questions for the operator, especially if they want 5 years of it. So.
We'll get that from them and send it back to you when we get it.
Okay.
I don't even know where we're at right now, so sorry. I think we were on parks, we got West Plains done, leaving that at the 5.2, since that's all they have remaining of their 6 million. Again, we'll get you an overview of REIT, but what we try to do is at the end of the year, keep 3 million to roll forward, just because we have commitments that we've made, and so we try to keep about a 2-year supply of those commitments. With this, right now, we basically are using all of the current REIT 2 capacity, and we basically used the REIT 1 capacity and all but 2 million of the REIT 1 fund balance. So we started at 6.9. This would take it down to 2.15. So if we do these projects, we are using a lot of our built up balance in REIT 1. And as you know, our current year is based upon the reduced REIT collections that we have been experiencing and that we don't expect to change.
Yeah, I think that's part of my concern, why I really want to see where we're at currently in REIT, because we have seen that decline and
I don't see it changing.
I don't see interest rates declining to make it.
Not to make a big swing.
So people aren't gonna be refinancing, which was how, I mean, we kept, the REIT dollars were just going up and up because it was all the refis. And we don't have those anymore, so.
Right now, it's more just sales on new construction is really what we're getting now.
Yeah, or just people moving, you know, kind of thing, so. Yeah, so I guess I'm concerned that, you know, we don't want to be borrowing against our REIT, you know, capacity, especially on parks, because I know we've talked about that. But it's like, I'm just, yeah, so I guess I want to see where we're at currently.
We can give you that projection going forward also.
And you'll see a nice, when you look at your budget binder and look at the REIT 1 and REIT 2, it'll show you clearly the identified fund balance capacity, which was then put to the top of the sheet on the capital.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to use it all, it's just, that's what's available.
And you'll be able to update that, because we'll know
With actuals.
some of the
Yes.
newer REIT numbers, so, okay.
We will provide that to you.
Okay, so I don't need to look it up, you're gonna send it.
Correct. And then the very last page of capital is just the revised sheriffs. We've taken out some of those duplicated items. we talked about like the FLIR, which was included in the price of the new helicopter. We've taken out some vehicles at the bottom of the page that were included in the patrol vehicles that they had asked for this year, that $1.7 million budget. So the helicopter, we've just done some cleanup on it. So that is about a $3.5 million purchase. They have I put in $1 million of special revenue. This would be projected sale of the Huey. And then they have a $500,000 grant. We do know they've applied for an additional $250,000. We should hear on that next week. I believe was Chief Ellis's estimation. So before we get to final budget, we'll have more numbers, but we will be working on a presentation for the helicopter to come back with possible funding and choices to make on that. So we're just finalizing that. We met with them on Friday.
Okay, and then the EVOC track, what's the special revenue that's coming?
That is that's still the funds from the bond issue.
Okay, so it was, because I thought it was included.
Yes, it was included in the bond. It's just we have not spent 1.3 million of that yet. That is going out to bid right now, and they may need to do some cuts to get it to fit inside that budget as well. But that is the remaining money after the training center was built. And so yes, we did add that on there as well, just to not forget about it.
And then when you talked to the sheriff's department, did they prioritize? Because I know talking to them that it wasn't necessarily prioritized.
Correct. The bomb suit definitely is a very high priority because we buy one every year. Every other year we buy it, and every other year, the other year is the city of Spokane buys it. This is our year to buy that. And then I know, Scott, you had other conversations with Sheriff Knowles.
Yes, I have. I've talked to him and asked him to make sure this is listed in order of priority. I don't think this has been revised yet. I don't know that they've given an updated revised priority list, but I've asked them to provide that to Randy and team. And the helicopter, I've asked Chief Ellis to come back in on the 28th of November and give an overview of, there's been a lot of questions from the commissioners around the helicopter, how it's going to be paid for, what are the contributions from the city of Spokane, what are the contributions from the valley, what does the contract say? So I've asked him to come back in and walk all through it, so it gives you a chance to make sure you have clarity on how those are being considered.
And by then we'll know about extra grant money also.
Yeah. Commissioner Jordan?
Sorry if this was covered previously. Just a question about the cars. I can't remember on the $1.7 million vehicle upgrade program. Is that there's no line item in their budget typically for purchases like that, correct, Randy?
That is correct. It's always a capital item.
Okay. And do we remember off the top of our heads, what was the amount spent last year on that as a capital expense?
I think they didn't spend it last year because they couldn't get the vehicles.
Right, it was a
before.
double expense in 2023.
Say that one more time, sorry.
We had 2 years of expenses in 2023 because the 2022 cars were not delivered until 2023. So we had to roll that budget forward. But it was
And
near
how
the
much
same
was it?
number. Tessa,
It was somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5, I want to say, for each
And
year's.
that was that 1 year's worth or 2 years worth?
1 year is about $1.5 million.
Okay, and so every year it's not part of their budget. It's basically on the list of countywide capital needs that we look at overall priorities and how much we have for capital available.
yes.
That's typically how it's been in the past.
Yes, because in the general fund, we haven't set up an equipment replacement reserve
Yeah.
fund because we haven't
Right.
had the money to do it, so.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Jordan, there have been years where we haven't purchased cars as well. So it's not a guaranteed reoccurring expense every year. There have been years where we have not purchased new vehicles.
Has that just been based on having less capital funds available at that
Yes.
particular year?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why kind of the downturn of 2010, there was a lot of reduction in staff and reduction in capital costs. And so that's when, I think, when I came on in 17, I mean, some of those vehicles were really old and needed to be retired. And then we've worked hard since then with the funding we've had to make sure that we get them, you know, the equipment that they needed.
That is all I have.
Is that it?
Plan for tonight.
Oh, that's all. Okay. Any other, was there any executive sessions?
Not for this morning.
Okay. Then we are gonna be adjourned for the day. So tomorrow we've got the 9 o'clock briefing. That is a full morning, it looks like. And then the afternoon, I have a 4 o'clock appointment tomorrow. But I will get to, if I have to leave early, because we do have several public hearing items. So I don't know, are you planning the executive session in the morning or the afternoon?
There is at least one, or there's 2 scheduled for tomorrow, one from my office and I think one from labor negotiations. So obviously if we need to get those done in the morning based on scheduling, then that's what we'll plan on.
Okay, hopefully we can. Okay.
We're only scheduled to go to 11:30 right now, so we can try to tackle them, one if not both, if it's available.
Great. Okay, thank you all very much. We will